Now, if Earth's history were a movie, we humans would only take up the last second of the end credits. Our planet has been around for about 4.6 billion years, but our human story began about 300,000 years ago, in Africa. Now our ancestors had some wild adventures in nature. They could have run into creatures so big they'd make today's elephants look like puppies. The woolly mammoth is a pretty famous animal, sure. His cousin, though, the Columbian mammoth, not so much. This giant used to roam places from Canada all the way down to Mexico. Unlike the furrier woolly mammoths, which hung out in colder places, these animals had shorter hair, resembling huge elephants. They also had incredibly large tusks, like 12 feet worth of spiraling sturdy tusks. And they weren't just for show, they came in handy when facing predators. That includes our ancestors. If you think about sloths these days, you're picturing these adorably slow creatures. They couldn't possibly be in your list of most dangerous animals. Well, their grandparents might have. For starters, we call them ground sloths, and they vary a lot in size. Some were as big as rhinos, and others, like the Megatherium, were as colossal as elephants. Imagine seeing a 20-foot-long sloth which doesn't mind chewing on some meat every now and then, at least in theory. Ever heard of Bigfoot? Well, our next animal kind of looks like him, but is a distant cousin to orangutans. Meet Gigantopithecus, the largest primate to ever call our planet its home. Standing tall at 10 feet and weighing more than 600 pounds, these animals were amazing to look at in real life. Unlike Bigfoot, they weren't constantly hiding. In fact, it's believed they were peaceful and gentle creatures. Sadly, they faded away about 100,000 years ago, mainly because their food sources slowly became unavailable. Those lush, fruity forests they called home eventually turned into dry grasslands. Next on our list is the cave hyena. Weighing a chunky 250 pounds and standing 3 feet tall, these beasts were as long as a grown-up lying down. What's even more interesting about these creatures is that they loved hanging out in groups. A pack could be as big as 30 of these animals, which meant they could easily take on even the biggest, heaviest mastodons. Our ancient families would have needed to stay alert around these hungry specimens. Sadly for these hyenas about 20,000 years ago, their numbers started going down. Soon enough, they completely disappeared from the planet. Quick pop quiz. What's called a tiger but isn't really one? It's the saber-toothed tiger. I mean, sure, they belong to the feline family, but they aren't technically tigers. First appearing around 42 million years ago, in July I think, many of their kind were gone before we even showed up. However, early Americans might have bumped into a couple of specimens from this group. If that really happened, it would have been quite the encounter. Think of the biggest wild lion today or the hefty Siberian tiger. These big cats also had some incredible features hidden in their fur. They were good at sneaking around, hiding, and pouncing on mammoths bigger than themselves. Their bite wasn't that strong, but they could open their jaws wide, like twice as much as a lion. And although their teeth were a bit on the weak side, they had buff forearms to pin down their dinner, giving those big fangs a purpose. Not the kind of kitty you'd want to play with. Dire wolves made their debut about 250,000 years ago. They were like the gray wolves we know today, but a lot stronger. While wolves these days stretch out to about 6 feet and tip the scales at 170 pounds max, dire wolves were about 5 feet and about 150 pounds. Found all over North and South America, they had admirable jaws, biting nearly a third harder than their modern counterparts. Also, their favorite snack was horses. But just like many other majestic beasts of the past, they faded away around 10,000 years ago. Now, names can be deceiving. Take the American lion, for example. It's not really a lion, it's more of a panther's big cousin. The other part of the name is correct, though. They did live in America about 330,000 years ago. This feline was no lap cat either. They were at the top of the wildcat pyramid, weighing a colossal 772 pounds. That's like stacking 4 grown men on a scale. Even the mighty African lion would look a tad bit shy beside these beasts. With the muscle to take down a bison, you wouldn't want to accidentally interrupt their dinner. They parted ways with this planet around 11,000 years ago, right after the last ice age. Now down in Australia, about 50,000 years ago, I wasn't around then, there lurked a relative of the Komodo dragon, the Megalania. Experts love to have debates on how big it was. Some say it stretched out to 23 feet. Others think it was just about 11 feet long. Either way, they were basically mega-sized Komodo dragons with a dangerous bite. If you think bears are already big and fluffy now, let's introduce the short-faced bear. While this big creature stood on its hind legs, it towered at 14 feet. With long limbs, they could outrun today's bears, hitting speeds up to 40 miles per hour. These ultra bears sadly disappeared around 11,600 years ago. Now imagine a crocodile. Okay, imagine that same crocodile, only supersized, with sporty legs, doing its thing in Australia about 1.6 million years ago. Well, say hello to the quincana. These crocs were extremely large, reaching 23 feet. And no, they weren't lazy river loungers. These creatures really love spending time on land. They evolved to have strong legs for their chases and razor-sharp teeth designed for slicing, not gripping. When did we stop sharing beaches with them? About 40,000 years ago. The name elephant bird might not sound familiar, but try to picture a bird that stood tall, as high as a basketball hoop at 10 feet, and weighed as much as a small car, 1,500 pounds. Their eggs were equally huge, like 150 chicken eggs bundled up into one. Now, as amazing as these birds sound, there's a lot we still don't know about them. They're hard to study, as most extinct animals are. Still, some recent studies have given us some clues. Scientists have been examining ancient molecules from their fossilized eggshells. It's an awesome piece of evidence, since these birdie shells were thick, preserving precious DNA inside. Plus, there are tons of these eggshell fragments sprinkled all over Madagascar's beaches. Because of these findings, we now know these birds were herbivores and loved eating leaves and seeds. We also know the tiny kiwi bird is its closest living relative. Now, dodos were these amazing birds we also used to share the planet with. They're like distant cousins to Asian pigeons. To give you some perspective, imagine a chunky bird weighing about 50 pounds. Similar to chickens, turkeys, and ostriches, dodos were also the types of birds that couldn't fly. Their wings were small, and they had the muscle strength of, well, a wet noodle. Now, you might have heard the word dodo used as a name for creatures that aren't that bright. Don't get confused, though, by this name. These birds were in fact intelligent. Scientists were able to figure that out by studying their fossils. It turns out that they were good at smelling stuff, unlike most birds that are all about the visuals. These creatures aren't around for us to study anymore, but that might change. One evolutionary biologist is on a mission to fully understand these amazing ancient birds. On that note, she revealed that the dodo's DNA has been completely sequenced. There are even talks about potentially bringing dodos back to life. They would make a nice addition to the lovely beaches of Mauritius, the place they used to call home many, many years ago.
Your heart is racing. You're running for your life from one of the biggest creatures you've ever seen. A giant reptile on two legs, sprinting right behind you. You hear the sound of a raging river next to you, but decide not to jump in. Thick leaves and bushes keep blocking your path, and you keep getting stuck in the mud. Everything around you is out to get you, and there's nowhere to hide. You spot a hollowed-out tree trunk and crawl inside. Whatever's out there is getting closer and closer. You hear deep guttural breathing and huge stomping. It's getting closer. You see a large tail from a crack in the tree trunk, swinging and knocking down bushes and small trees. Whatever it is, it's sniffing you out like those dogs at the airport. And right next to your face are giant bugs the size of a house cat. Perfect. You've always been scared to even look at crawly little things, but this one's so close and so big, you can actually see its facial features. It's looking at you like you're the alien. You want to scream, but can't. Then, out of the darkness, more bugs. They're curious things, flicking their antennas all over your body. Okay, this is too much. A bug is one thing, but now a giant centipede thing is crawling your way. Its fangs are the size of your thumb. You dart out of the tree trunk and come face to face with a giant monster. It stops and stares at you, knowing you have no place to go. Claws and teeth the size of bowling pins. That's enough to keep you up at night. It's getting ready to charge right at you. Welcome to the most dangerous period and area in history for a human, the mid-Cretaceous Sahara. This place was thriving around 100 million years ago in what would now be North Africa. Back then, the continents were all arranged differently, and the weather was wild. Extreme storms were pretty common, and temperatures would rise and fall like a Mexican wave at a soccer stadium. Then, sea levels started to rise. Water flooded the Kem region, an area between modern-day Algeria and Morocco. Over the next millions of years, asteroids, volcanic eruptions, and other natural disasters wiped out everything else. Bye-bye, dinosaurs. Thanks for playing. You probably think of the Sahara as one of the most inhospitable places on Earth, but back when it had trees and rivers, it was even more dangerous. The famous River of Giants was a huge river system that stretched from modern-day Egypt all the way to Morocco. The land was flat and not much vegetation grew there, but it was enough for life to exist. Frightening, scary life. That creature you're staring at, it's a giant, scary-looking theropod, and it's out to get you. Imagine a T-Rex-like dinosaur that's more than 32 feet tall and has an epic jawline. Scary stuff. They were the top dogs in the food chain back then. And that's why this place and period in history was so unique. The entire area had an incredible imbalance between hungry dinos and poor little dino snacks. There wasn't enough food to go around. Scientists were never able to find much evidence of herbivores. That means it might have been a royal rumble of carnivorous creatures waiting to pounce on each other at any moment. So, after a while of having a stare-down contest with a giant theropod, a shadow creeps up on you from behind. You're too scared to turn around, but the growling is louder than anything you've ever heard. It shakes you to the core. You turn around and see a Spinosaurus, and that's about all you can see. You know how they always show the T-Rex as the king of the dinosaurs? Well, this one would be, what, the emperor? It stands about 50 feet tall and has a sail of scales on its back, the size of a regular human. Then add in a crocodile-style snout with razor-sharp teeth and some short, powerful legs. Its diet mainly consists of river fish, but it's looking at you like you're a delicious fish taco. The two alphas are now in a standoff, with you stuck in the middle. But before you close your eyes and get ready to be eaten, they begin fighting each other, knocking down trees. You tiptoe your way out of there and run. The further you go, the better, right? Wrong. Not here, because everywhere you go, there's going to be something dangerous. During this period, there was danger in the sky, in the water, and on land. There were small mammals scurrying around here and there, but they mostly stayed in the shadows to avoid danger. After 5 minutes of running as fast as humanly possible, you make it out of the forest and onto an open plain. Bad move. Now there's nowhere to hide. Suddenly, you hear another shriek. You look behind you. Nothing. It's just short grass everywhere. Then you tilt your head up to the sky and see what looks like a giant bird. Only these are technically flying crocodiles. There were plenty of huge pterosaurs that ruled the skies. Alanqua saharica was a flying reptile that may have eaten fish in the river. Those fish must have been tasty. It had a huge wingspan and long, slender jaws. Oh, and it was the size of a small bus. This one found you and is racing down to catch you. You run for your life, again. And this time, there's no place to hide. Suddenly, you feel talons grasping onto you and you're lifted off the ground. You soar up. If you weren't scared out of your mind, you might have noticed how beautiful the giant river channels below you are. The Elanquo maneuvers like a fighter jet, headed for the mountains, dodging all obstacles. You see a large nest with some mini beasts in it. They're hungry and as large as you. Not a great combination. You try to break free, but it's impossible. The creature drops you in the middle of the nest and flies off. You try to cover yourself, but the little ones keep pecking away. It's only a matter of time before it's too late. You look down below you and see the river. You can't tell how deep it is, but it's got a really strong current. You're out of options. You dive into the raging river and get dragged along with the current. Safe for now, ish. Imagine it's 2021. You're walking along one of the hottest and driest places on Earth, the middle of the Sahara Desert, only to find fossils of oversized fish. They ranged from bite size to bus size. Even freshwater sharks lived there. These weren't your average little fishies. Judging by their teeth, those guys meant business. You might even find a giant sea turtle swimming around. Okay, back to your wacky adventure. Luckily, you wash up on a safe sandy part of the river where you're able to relax. You drink some river water and try to find a safe place to make camp. Every noise you hear makes you jump. You sit down and try to enjoy the calmness of ancient Earth. Just when you feel you can finally catch your breath, you see a Spinosaurus walking along the river on the prowl. You run off and hide under a bush. It passes you by. You're safe. Or not. It turns, shakes the bushes and sees you. Just then, a large boom scares it away. It's the sound of you jolting awake. You turn on the light and see your cat staring at you. Those dinosaurs seem so real, probably because of that documentary you were watching right before bed. The entire mid-Cretaceous ecosystem depended on rivers for daily life. Just like all ancient civilizations, rivers were essential for the creatures of the time. And very recently, scientists discovered a new species of snakes that went extinct back then, with no known descendants. To understand these ancient ecosystems, it's important to know a lot about fossils. You might find two different fossils side by side, but those animals might have lived millions of years apart.
Currently, there are approximately 20 billion animals inhabiting our world. If everything were ideal, we would have 5 billion more animals on Earth. But many species have gone extinct, and around 44,000 species are currently endangered. The largest, most recent mass extinction event in history occurred during the dinosaur era, leading to the eradication of 75% of species on Earth. The Tulachi wallaby is a long-lost relative of today's kangaroo, but they had a hidden superpower, night vision. That's why they were mostly active at night. They were 3 feet tall and fed on grass, fruit leaves, and other plants. Wallabies lived in grassy areas near swamps and other water bodies, but not for long. By the 19th century, their numbers had gone down, bringing them to the edge of extinction. Only 14 wallabies had been left in the wild by 1920. A rescue mission was launched. They tried to capture the last 14 animals to protect them. But the situation got out of control and 10 wallabies lost their lives. The 4 remaining ones were transferred to a special facility, and in 1935, the last animal passed away. Only one picture of the Tulachi wallaby is left now. There were reports of the animal's sightings after that, but no proof was shown, and the creature was officially declared extinct in the 70s. Short-faced bears were a unique species that lived in North America, particularly Alaska. It was a massive bear, weighing around 1,500 pounds. When standing on its hind legs, it was around 12 feet tall, a whole foot taller than today's biggest beast in this family, the polar bear. This animal was different from today's bears because almost all of them are omnivores, except for polar bears. But this monster was solely carnivorous, which was the reason for their extinction. During the end of the Ice Age, many herbivores were gone, and those bears did not have enough food to survive. They were the Usain Bolt of the bear world, the fastest Bruins to have ever lived, reaching a top speed of 40 miles per hour, which is 5 miles faster than grizzlies. There are around 400 million pigeons in the world now. Some time ago, in America, a species of birds called passenger pigeons were abundant throughout the country, especially in the eastern forests. There were more than 1 billion of them, but they went from 1 billion to 0 in a few years. They had small heads and necks, but long tails and wings and strong breast muscles that allowed them to fly super long distances. The last passenger pigeon passed away in captivity in 1914. It was named Martha. With that, the ecosystem in the U.S. has never seen this bird again. Now, elks are enormous animals, but they look tiny when you compare them to long-gone Irish elks. That elk was around 7 feet tall at the shoulder with a humongous antler of 12 feet. Today, elk are only 4.5 feet tall at the shoulder and have around 4-foot-long antlers. Despite its name, this elk was found all over the world, from Asia to Europe. It got its name because, in Ireland near Dublin, researchers found a perfectly preserved specimen. Since then, it's been called the Irish elk. The last one passed away in Ireland. The main reason for their disappearance was their inability to adapt to changes. When the Ice Age ended, the elk could not survive and became extinct. Now, somewhere deep in the forests of Costa Rica lives the interesting-looking golden toad. It was discovered in 1966 in one particular spot where all toads would gather to mate. In 1967, a large population of this golden nugget was noted in that same spot. But the following year, only 10 to 11 toads were seen, and the year after that, in 1968, only one lonely male toad showed up at the spot. For years, there were searches for golden toads. In 2004, the toads were officially declared extinct. Humans were not responsible this time. The drought in the area in the 80s had a significant impact on the toads. Still, the last straw was the arrival of a new fungal species that caused the animal's skin to thicken, eventually leading to the toad passing away. This chytrid fungus is responsible for the extinction of more than 90 frog and amphibian species, becoming one of the biggest threats to their lives. Now, Canada is a very cold country, no surprise there, and nobody would expect tropical birds like parrots to live there. However, there was a parrot species that lived in America and some parts of Canada. I'm talking about the Carolina parakeet. Those were truly beautiful birds with orange-yellowish heads and green bodies. Their favorite rest spots were big trees alongside rivers. This parrot's favorite food was cocklebur seeds, which are poisonous to us, but the bird had no problem eating them. Also, they used the dangerous cockleburs as a defense mechanism. After they ingested loads of them, their meat became poisonous, and predators do not enjoy eating toxic birds. Carolina parakeets were abundant, there were millions of them. But since the Ice Age, their numbers had been gradually going down because of natural reasons, mainly temperature. By 1935, no such parakeets were left in the wild. Today's African lion had a much more prominent and notorious cousin, the Barbary lion. Those cats were mentioned in many famous old books. They were described as mean, terrifying beasts. It's believed that they were the largest lion species ever. Those big cats weighed around 600 pounds and were 9 feet from the head to tail. Unfortunately, this lion was declared extinct in the 90s due to many factors. Today, we only have one photo of this animal taken from a plane. Paradise parrots were native to Australia. They were genuinely amazing birds with captivating colors. What was unique about them was their nesting habits. They only nested in termite mounds. This parrot was always on the edge of extinction, and the reason for that is still unknown. Mice, rats, and other animals also hunted them, and it added fuel to the fire. The last bird was spotted in the year 1972. Since then, paradise parrots have only been seen in museums. The Gulf of Mexico was once home to Caribbean monk seals. This species of seals enjoyed spending time in the warm subtropical climate of the Caribbean. Most of the time, they were found near reefs and islands, foraging for food. Like most of us, they also love sandy beaches and were usually seen in groups of 100 seals, resting before the next adventure. In the year 1886, monk seals were declared extinct. You can still see this animal in 2 museums. Both are located in the UK. As we all know, zebras have black and white stripes. But once, a zebra species had only half the body covered with brown and white stripes. The rest was just brown, and the belly was white. It was called the quagga. They lived in the southern part of Africa in grass fields and wet pastures, like today's zebras, and ate grass and other plants. The last quagga perished in 1888, but not all hope is lost. Today, extensive research is being done to bring this animal back into the wild. Australia is home to many outlandish animals, but the craziest ones are probably gastric brooding frogs. This species is not like your ordinary frog that lays eggs. They hatch their young inside their stomach and give birth by vomiting around 25 fully formed young frogs. Sometimes their stomach becomes so bloated that they have to breathe through their skin. 2 species of this frog were discovered in the northern and southern parts of Australia in the 1970s by Mike Taylor. A decade after their discovery, both species are gone. The main reason for their extinction is the chytrid fungus. Luckily for them, they're also part of a de-extinction program that's putting serious efforts into bringing them back into the wild. Australia used to have its own giants. Those were huge animals that could have dwarfed anything living on this continent these days. Scientists found the remains of many of those ancient creatures in the Narracuta Caves in South Australia, 4 hours away from Adelaide. It's a lovely region, but it can be treacherous. Watch out for holes the ground is pocked with. Known as pitfall traps, many of them are no wider than a coffee table. They're deep and plunge into the darkest of caverns. One of such caverns is called Victoria Fossil Cave, and it's a treasury that's been hiding the bones of around 45,000 animals for centuries. Some of the oldest bones belong to creatures far more terrifying than any animal you can encounter today. Those were the ancient Australian megafauna, huge beasts that roamed the continent during the Pleistocene epoch. During those, there were giant snakes, huge flightless birds, wombat-like creatures the size of a rhinoceros, and many others. One of the largest examples of the Australian megafauna scientists have discovered so far is the Diprotodon. That giant herbivorous creature was 10 feet long and 6.5 feet tall, and weighed more than 6,000 pounds, about as much as a small Asian elephant. Even though this terrifying beast didn't eat meat, it could have smashed other animals with its sheer weight. Scientists have found the remains of hundreds of such creatures all over Australia, so it's safe to say that no other animal from that time or in that location was larger than this giant. Despite its creepy appearance, the Diprotodon was a relative to the modern-day wombat, and those are known to sometimes pounce humans. The Diprotodon had toes that pointed inward and were well suited for digging burrows. On the other hand, Diprotodon was a giant, and it was unlikely that it used to do so. It was likely a trait it had inherited from its smaller burrowing ancestors, or it could have used its claws to search for roots. This theory is supported by the fact that the animal's pouch was facing backward. It prevented any dirt from collecting inside while the creature was digging. Since this animal was so big, it didn't have to worry much about predators. Up until 60,000 years ago, when the first humans appeared on the continent, full-grown Diprotodons only had to look out for creatures like the quincana. Measuring in at a whopping 20 feet long, the quincana was a land crocodile. It lived in Australia from around 20 million to 40,000 years ago. It disappeared along with most other mega creatures of the last ice age. It's thought to be the result of the first humans coming to the continent. Even though the quincana was extremely fast and dangerous, it was possible that this creature got outcompeted by human hunters who took all available prey. Unlike modern crocodiles that are mainly aquatic, that mighty beast was a land dweller. Scientists figured it out by studying the quincana's legs. They were able to support and carry the body clear off the ground. It means there was no escape for ancient people once the quincana spotted them. Modern crocodiles can only push themselves along on their bellies. Such an adaptation allowed the quincana to chase its prey for long periods of time, exhausting it in the process. Another creepy feature of this ancient monster was its teeth. Aquatic crocs have conical teeth. Those are great for gripping and holding on to prey underwater. But quincana had knife-like teeth, ideal for slicing soft-bodied animals like, mammals. Another Australian monster, Thylacoleo, wasn't all that large, but it didn't make it any less terrifying. It was still among the top predators and the biggest carnivorous animals in Australia. This creature was a true oddity of nature, even by prehistoric standards. First, its teeth resembled not those of a regular predator, but those of a rodent. Its front incisors were enlarged, taking the place of canines. Premolars were also shaped like blades. They were used for cutting flesh and bone. At first, scientists thought that Thylacoleo used those teeth to eat nuts and fruits. But later, a study showed that the use of such teeth was better suited on necks and spines. The jaws of this ancient creature were immensely powerful. A 220-pound Thylacoleo had a bite force similar to that of a present-day 550-pound lion. It means that the animal could easily bring down prey much larger than itself. Then there was Thylacoleo's tail. It had strong muscles which provided the animal with the ability to use the tail as support when tackling large prey. The Thylacoleo had retractable claws, and this feature is very uncommon among marsupials. It allowed the animal to keep its razor-sharp hooks from getting blunt and could help it get a better grip on its prey. Scientists are quite sure that, like today's leopards, the Thylacoleo could climb trees and jump on other animals from above. It was done so fast and stealthily, they never knew what hit them. The creature's rear feet support this theory. The first toe there was reduced, but the foot had a rough pad like what modern-day possums have. It allowed them to have a better grip while climbing. Right after scientists found the first skull of the Meliolania, this animal was classified as a lizard. That's why its name translates to small groomer. But after they discovered more complete fossils, it turned out that the Meliolania was a giant turtle. But that's not all. It was one of the largest land turtles to ever have existed. The main reason researchers initially believed the creature to be a lizard was the fact that its skull was adorned with a series of spikes. It's something the modern-day horned lizard can boast. But even after discovering the true nature of the Meliolania, scientists still don't know how to properly catalog it. It might have been a creature that folded its neck under its spine, or it could have folded it to the side. Beside those defensive mechanisms on its head, the Meliolania was also equipped with a spiked tail, which was probably used to prevent predators from attacking the animal from behind. Most species of the Meliolania disappeared around 2,000 to 3,000 years ago because of humans who hunted them to extinction in both Australia and on the surrounding islands. It took around 2 centuries for these turtles to go extinct in that region of the globe. The Megalania was a giant Australian lizard that existed at the end of the Pleistocene epoch. It looked like a Komodo dragon and the Australian monitor lizard, which are both believed to be Megalania's closest living relatives. Fossils tell us that the ancient animal was anywhere from 15 to 26 feet in length. Ow! The youngest fossil remains of this ancient Australian monitor lizard date back to about 50,000 years ago. The first indigenous settlers must have encountered Megalania, which led to the lizard's extinction. Originally, scientists thought that the Megalania was the only member of the genus Megalania, but these days it belongs to the genus Varanus, which means that the prehistoric creature is closely related to other Australian monitor lizards. Our next giant creature on our list was once dubbed an ostrich on steroids. I mean, look at it. It was the last of the thunderbirds to go extinct in Australia. The Giganotosaurus lived on the continent at the same time as early humans. They might have coexisted for 15,000 years or so before the huge bird eventually disappeared. This theory has some proof. The bird's fossils found along with human artifacts. Some cave paintings also depict flightless birds similar to the Giganotosaurus in size and shape. Although it wasn't the largest bird in Australia, the goose-like creature was still as tall as a grown-up man and weighed around 550 pounds. Even a modern-day ostrich can be dangerous if it feels threatened. Imagine meeting its giant prehistoric relative. Scientists are still arguing about its diet. Many believe the creature was an herbivore, but there's still a chance that the Giganotosaurus was a partial scavenger. Its small, stubby wings and powerful hoof-like legs hint that the bird could have been a plant eater. But its huge beak and exceptionally deep lower jaw evoke suspicion. Such features are highly unusual in birds.
Today, I'm going to tell you about creatures that had unique features which allowed them to grow to incredible sizes. They were some of the most impressive animals to have ever existed on our planet. The Giganotosaurus is a genus of sauropod dinosaurs that lived approximately 97 million years ago in what is now South America. Scientists think it was one of the largest land animals ever, with a length of up to 100 feet and a weight of up to 100 tons. A farmer stumbled upon a giant leg bone while tending his cattle. That's how he discovered the first fossils of the Giganotosaurus in Argentina in 1987. Further excavations uncovered more bones, revealing a massive dinosaur that would have dwarfed most other animals of its time. The Spinosaurus, meaning spine lizard, is a genus of theropod dinosaur that lived around 97 million years ago in what is now North Africa. It is believed to be one of the largest carnivorous dinosaurs to ever exist, with a length of up to 60 feet and a weight of up to 23 tons. The Spinosaurus is known for its distinctive elongated sail-like structure on its back. It was likely used for thermoregulation. It also had long crocodile-like jaws that were lined with sharp teeth. This allowed the creature to catch and eat large prey, such as fish, crocodiles, and other dinosaurs. The first fossils of the Spinosaurus were discovered in Egypt in 1912. The sperm whale, Physeter macrocephalus, is a species of toothed whale that is the largest toothed predator on Earth. It also has the largest brain of any animal species. It is found in oceans all over the world and can dive to depths of up to 7,000 feet in search of food. You can easily recognize sperm whales by their massive, block-shaped heads, which can measure up to 1/3 of their total body length. They have dark brown or grayish-blue skin and a distinctive wrinkled appearance. The Titanoboa is an extinct genus of a giant snake that lived approximately 58 million years ago. It is considered to be the largest known snake ever. It could grow up to 42 feet and weighed around 2,500 pounds. The first fossils of the Titanoboa were discovered in a coal mine in Colombia in 2004. This discovery meant a lot because it provided insights into the size and behavior of snakes during the Paleocene era, as well as the overall climate and ecosystem of the time. The blue whale, Balaenoptera musculus, is the largest animal on Earth, measuring up to 100 feet in length and weighing as much as 200 tons. These marine mammals are found in oceans all over the world and can live up to 90 years. Blue whales have a long, streamlined body that is usually blue-gray in color with mottled patterns. They have a small dorsal fin and 2 pectoral fins that are about 1/3 the length of their body. Blue whales feed on tiny shrimp-like creatures called krill, and they eat a lot. A single adult blue whale can eat up to 8,000 pounds of krill in a day. The Leadsichthus is an extinct genus of large, bony fish that lived during the Jurassic period, approximately 155 million years ago. It is believed to be one of the largest fish that have ever lived. Some estimates suggest that it could grow up to 55 feet in length. The first fossils of Leadsichthus were discovered in England in the 19th century, and more recent discoveries have been made in other parts of Europe, South America, and Africa. Despite its enormous size, the Leadsichthus was a filter feeder, similar to modern-day whale sharks, and likely fed on plankton and other small organisms. The creature did it by simply swimming with its enormous mouth open, filtering water through its gills. The pterodostro is an extinct species of flamingo-like birds that lived approximately 35 million years ago. They were relatively small birds with a wingspan of about 2-3 feet. And they were known for their distinctive long, narrow beaks equipped with comb-like structures used for filter feeding. The pterodostro lived in shallow bodies of water, like lakes and lagoons, and mostly fed on small crustaceans and other tiny organisms. The animal filtered them from the water using the comb-like structures on the inside of its beak while swimming through the water. The African elephant is the largest land animal on Earth and one of the most recognizable ones. There are two species of the African elephant, the savanna elephant, Loxodonta africana, and the forest elephant, Loxodonta cyclotis. You can see them in various parts of sub-Saharan Africa. These creatures can be identified by their large size, gray skin, and long trunks. African elephants can grow up to 13 feet tall and weigh up to 14,000 pounds, depending on the species and gender.
The liger is probably the most popular hybrid animal and an incredibly large cat. You won't see them in the wild. People most deliberately breed them. Lions and tigers don't even inhabit the same areas. So, a liger is a mix of a male lion and a female tiger, and they can grow to be very big in a pretty short period of time. They're actually the biggest cats in the world. Hercules, the largest recorded liger, is a real example of that. 922 pounds and 10.8 feet long. Imagine taking him for a walk. Ligers are mostly way bigger than either of their parents. In most cases, they behave and look more like lions than tigers. But they have some tiger traits too. For example, striped backs, and they're crazy about swimming. The taigen. Nobody could fault you for thinking the taigen and liger are basically the same animal. I mean, they're both a combination of tigers and lions. But a taigen comes from a crossbreeding of a male tiger and a female lion. They're usually smaller than their parents, and definitely much smaller than their giant, could you call them siblings? In most cases, they inherit charming looks from their tiger fathers, but they get some interesting traits from their mother's side too. For example, love for socialization and the ability to roar. Hands down, one of the rarest hybrid animals in the world are wolfins. These fellas are a mashup of a female bottlenose dolphin and a male false killer whale. Its name might make you think differently, but a false killer whale belongs to the dolphin family. They're not even related to killer whales. Wolfins are such an interesting 50-50 mix and balance of their parents. They have dark gray skin, the perfect blend of a black false killer whale and light gray dolphin skin. Dolphins have anywhere between 80 and 100 teeth. False killer whales have 44. And their hybrid young is halfway, with 66 teeth in total. What would it look like if algae and a slug paired? No need to imagine. You have a green sea slug to check the result. It lives in salt marshes in Canada and New England. And it's possibly the weirdest hybrid creature you'll see in this video, and in general. Part plant, part animal. So, some slugs seem to have been very sneaky while stealing the genes from innocent algae that they have eaten to enable them to look like this. Since they're partially a plant, they can produce the plant pigment called chlorophyll. That means these unusual slugs can even photosynthesize. That's the process plants use to turn sunlight into energy. So they produce their own molecules that contain energy without having to eat anything at all. When scientists first discovered it, a green sea slug was the first case of a multicellular animal that's able to produce chlorophyll. What do you get when you mix a male leopard and a female lion? You get an interesting hybrid called a lepin. These animals grow to be almost as big as lions, but they still have shorter legs, similar to their father leopard. They inherit some of his other traits too, like a love for climbing and swimming. You can have a union with a male lion and a female leopard too, and the result is called a leopard. Male lions are usually around 10 feet long and weigh about 500 pounds. The female leopard is way smaller, only 5 feet long, with a weight of about 80 pounds. The difference in size here is too big, so this pairing really doesn't happen that often. Okay, how about a buffalo and a cow? When you were little, maybe you thought that they could be a good match. But in reality, the combination creates an unusual hybrid animal called a beefalo. Not many types of hybrid animals can reproduce on their own, but a beefalo can do it. When a grizzly and a polar bear get together, it results in a growler bear, or grizzly bear, or grizzlar, whichever you like the most. You can see them even in the wild. These two types of bears have a mutual contempt for one another. Yep, they're not good at living together in a mutual habitat. But even though it's rare, the love can still happen and result in these cute caramel-colored hybrid growler bears. In most cases, they'll be a bit smaller than polar bears, on average 60 inches tall at the shoulder, and approximate weight 1,000 pounds. But they're well equipped for surviving in warmer climates, thanks to the genes they got from their grizzly family side. Now let's get to one pretty tough fella, the jag lion. As its name implies, it's the hybrid of a jaguar and a lion. We don't know much about these intriguing big cats because only a few of them exist. But there was an unintentional mixing between a black jaguar and a lioness, which eventually resulted in 2 jag lion cubs. One had a dark gray coat with black spots because of the dominant melanin gene black jaguars usually have. The other one had a lion color and the rosette pattern spots that remind you of a jaguar. Yep, you already know it. There are also ligwars, a hybrid of a female jaguar and a male lion. That's some colorful family. Speaking of wild cats, have you ever heard of a savanna cat? Savanna cats are in both categories of house pets and exotic hybrids, since they're a mix of a domestic cat and a wild African serval hybrid animal. We're talking about striking animals, almost as big as a domestic cat. But what gives them their exotic look are their tall bodies, slender forms, and spotted coats. These cats are extremely loyal, intelligent, and loving creatures. Here's one unexpected mixture, a zebroid. Technically, it's a name people use to describe a hybrid of a zebra and any equine species. But when you pair a zebra and a horse, their young is called a zorse. Zebra hybrids mostly look like whichever animals they've been crossbred with, but with the striped coat of a pure zebra. Most of these hybrid creatures don't even have fully striped coats. You can mostly see the stripes on non-white areas of their bodies and legs. Speaking of zebra hybrids, check out this adorable creature. It's called a zonkey, or zedonk, zebras, zenki. Take your pick. They're mostly either tan, gray, or brown in color. You'll distinguish them by unique stripes that are darkest on their legs and belly. Unlike some hybrids, such as the liger, zonkies can normally live in the wild. In fact, that's where you can find them, living life to the fullest across savannas and open woodland, mostly in Africa. Can you guess what a geep is? Yep, a combination of goat and sheep, and definitely one of the most adorable and cuddliest hybrid creatures in this video. Geeps are very rare. Some experts even believe it's possible that they're not true hybrids, but just sheep with certain genetic abnormalities. After all, sheep and goats do carry different numbers of chromosomes, which means cross-species mixes are almost impossible. When a camel and a llama get together, you get a cute little thing called a kama. Similar to beefalo, the kama also produces the best economic traits of both its parents. The first one was born in 1998. Kamas don't have camel humps. Their body is covered in soft, fleecy fur, similar to their llama side of the family. They can drink big amounts of water at a time, so they can survive with almost no water at all for pretty long periods. The coy wolf is a hybrid where nothing looks that unusual to most people, since the coyote and the wolf are not that drastically different in their looks. After all, these two species only diverged around 200,000 years ago. Now they're still able to mate and bring coy wolf cubs to the world. People living in eastern Canada and the US might be familiar with these smart, adaptable animals that inhabit their forests, neighborhood parks, or sometimes even cities. These hybrids have emerged over the past century or so, and they've picked up the characteristics of both their parents. When a coy wolf is fully grown, it's somewhere in between the size of both parents, but it's also 55 pounds heavier than pure coyotes and has a bigger jaw, longer legs, smaller ears, and a bushier tail. Check out the narluga, an extremely rare creature whose parents are a narwhal and a beluga whale. It's a pretty strange animal, but far from being lonely, they mostly live in the North Atlantic. Scientists had suspected their existence for decades. In 1990, they found an unusual-looking whale skull located in an Inuit hunter's tool shed in Greenland. People from that area said that there were other similar-looking animals, and they fit the description of neither a beluga whale nor a narwhal. People said they had gray skin, narwhal-like tails, and beluga-like flippers. Narwhals and beluga whales are similar in size, and they share a family, the Monodontidae family. So it may not even be that surprising that they're able to successfully breed in the wild.
It was a 40 feet long and 12 feet tall beast, the king of dinosaurs. Its massive and muscular body weighed up to 8 tons. Its serrated teeth were sharp, and its jaws had a bite so strong they could crush a car. The creature had 2 powerful legs. It lived in forested river valleys all across North America, almost 70 million years ago. I'm talking about the most famous movie star among dinosaurs, T-Rex. It was very smart, with a brain twice as big as that of any large meat-eating dino. It was slower than other hunters, developing a speed of up to 12 miles per hour. Its other weakness was its small arms. Some scientists think they were just an evolutionary leftover, like the pelvic bones of some snakes. But others believe T-Rex used its arms to hunt. Its 4-inch claws helped the animal out. T-Rex was undoubtedly frightening, but surprisingly, there were even scarier dinosaurs in the past. Around 100 million years ago, there was a giant creature with the name that meant a spine lizard. It was Spinosaurus, the largest carnivorous dino. It was bigger than T-Rex and could grow almost 60 feet long. Its weight could be as great as 22 tons. The animal had long spines on its back. They could grow up to 7 feet long and were connected by folds of skin. They formed something that looked like a sail. Some scientists think it was a hump Spinosaurus used to store water. This dino had dense bones and short hind limbs. Researchers believe that these dinos could use their flat and wide-clawed feet for paddling. This was the first dino that could ever swim. Unfortunately, it couldn't process smells like most other theropods. These were a group of 2-legged carnivorous dinosaurs that appeared on Earth 230 million years ago. That's why the animals the creature hunted could hide from it on land. The Spino-dino spent most of its time in the water. It roamed the swamps of North Africa and mostly fed on fish, big prehistoric sharks, and sometimes other dinosaurs. It had a long, thin, and narrow snout like a crocodile. Unlike other dinos of its kind, which had curved teeth, Spinosaurus had conically shaped straight teeth. Giganotosaurus, which is the Greek word for giant southern lizard, was considered the largest meat-eating dino until Spinosaurus was found. It lived around 100 million years ago in South America, around 30 million years before T-Rex appeared there. It was longer and taller, but more slender than T-Rex. And while T-Rex had 2 fingers, this giant had 3. It walked upright on its 2 big and very strong legs. Its tail was pointed and thin, which helped the creature make fast turns while running and keep its balance. The animal could move at a speed of up to 31 miles per hour. T-Rex's maximum speed was 25 miles per hour at the most. Any faster than that, and the giant could lose its balance and fall over. Giganotosaurus had 2 arms with sharp claws. It was mostly an opportunistic meat-eater feeding on everything it found on its way. Its bite wasn't as strong as T-Rex's, but it still managed to deal with some bigger animals, like herbivore dinosaurs. Maybe there was even an Giganotosaurus among them, the biggest animals ever found. It's hard to imagine how Giganotosaurus could take down a 50-ton beast on its own. That's why scientists think they may have hunted in groups. The animal's only weakness was its small brain. It was twice smaller than T-Rex's. This means the T could at least win a chess game. Big retractable sickle-shaped claws in the creature's feet are great for cutting. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Utahraptor. That's a mini T-Rex that lived 125 million years ago. If a big T-Rex was coming for you, you could hide under a rock or some other place where it wouldn't be able to reach you. But there would be no place where its mini version couldn't follow you. Discovered in Utah, strong, toothy, and armored with huge claws, more than 9 inches long, an adult Utahraptor was 20 feet long and 5 feet tall at the hip. These creatures were covered in feathers. This is why fully grown animals look like gigantic turkeys. The Utahraptor's main weakness was their size. They were a bit smaller than many other dinos, but these guys made up for that by hunting in packs. Allosaurus, which means a different lizard in Greek, was a massive carnivore reaching 40 feet in length and weighing 2 tons. It roamed the Earth around 150 million years ago. Similar to T-Rex, this dino had strong back legs and a large snout. Its mouth was full of sharp teeth. The animal easily lost them when eating, but they usually grew back. Allosaurus was already fully grown by the age of 15, and its lifespan was around 28 years. The creature had a short neck and a long, narrow skull, disproportionately big compared to the rest of its body. This dino also had a pair of horns above its eyes and ridges along the top of its nasal bones leading to those horns. Allosaurus chased big herbivore dinosaurs. When several Allosauruses gathered in a group, they could take down even such colossal creatures as Apatosaurus. But scientists still doubt if they could cooperate, because these dinos were generally not too friendly toward one another. Some of the animals' bones had an hourglass shape, which made them lighter and reduced their strength. They were similar to the hollow bones modern birds have. Another weakness of this dino was its bite. It was less powerful than that of some modern animals, like lions, alligators, or leopards. Scientists think Allosaurus may have used its skull as a hatchet. The Giganotosaurus was one of the freakiest dinos out there. It lived 100 to 60 million years ago. It had a very small head and bizarre feet with 4 toes, unlike their ancestors that had 3. Its body was covered with feathers. This weirdo had the longest claws scientists have ever recorded. They were 3 feet long each. These claws were curved and sharp. The dino used them to collect plants for lunch. Scientists are still not sure if this creature was a herbivore or carnivore, or both. The dino had a long neck. There were no teeth in its upper jaw. Its wrist bones were like the ones modern birds have. The Giganotosaurus might have evolved from a meat-eating to plant-eating animal throughout time. Unfortunately, in comparison with meat-eaters, herbivore dinosaurs were much weaker, and still, those claws could make its enemies think twice. High-spined lizard, or a Giganotosaurus, lived 110 million years ago. It was 2 feet shorter than T-Rex but had a similar body structure. Like T-Rexes, these creatures often went after bigger and more challenging animals. For example, with those backbones so hard, it seemed as if they were carrying a giant turtle shell, like Ankylosaur. The high-spined lizard was very territorial. It had a brain shaped like the letter S and an excellent sense of smell. What made a Giganotosaurus vulnerable was its small arms. And still, the creature used them to hunt other animals surprisingly well. The dino pulled its catch close to its torso, which was like a hug you wouldn't be able to escape from. Diplodocus lived 150 million years ago. The 90-foot-long creature was possibly the longest dinosaur ever. Its tail, which could reach 46 feet in length, was the longest tail of any animal ever. And its neck was more than 20 feet long. The underside of the dino's tail had 2 rows of bones, which made the creature even stronger and more mobile. Diplodocus didn't look scary, long-necked, gentle, peacefully munching on plants, until it used its tail like a whip, making even the scariest meat-eaters back away. This tail was the center of the dino's mass, which was why Diplodocus could move very quickly. Scientists first thought, this is a lizard-like animal, but its posture was more like that of an elephant. Plus, Diplodocus had nasal openings on its forehead. The dino's weakness was its small teeth and weak force bite. Quetzalcoatlus was the biggest flying animal ever. It lived 70 million years ago and controlled the skies of North America. It was a toothy, pin-headed creature with a blunt snout. It was as tall as a giraffe and weighed 550 pounds. Quetzalcoatlus had a small torso and long neck and legs. Its wings were short compared to the rest of its body, but still long enough to stretch for 40 feet. Scientists think this animal could fly at a speed of up to 80 miles per hour and travel 400 miles in a day. This dino was weaker than, let's say, T-Rex or most other carnivores of that time, but it had powerful muscles, which helped the animal rise into the air in the blink of an eye.
If you draw up a map, trace a line connecting the island of Bermuda, Puerto Rico, Miami, and back to Bermuda, what do you get? The infamous triangle, known for swallowing thousands of ships and aircraft over the centuries. But there's a new mystery to this already enigmatic place. Something's lurking deep in the waters below, and it's leaving bizarre clues of its existence. Splash! Your submarine hits the water surface. You descend 100, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 feet. It's getting darker. The sub's walls creak as the pressure grows. Over 1,400 psi. It's like the weight of a grand piano squeezing every square inch of your body from all sides. You've made it to your destination. All that's left is to spot the beast. Just in time, among the black void, you see a bright green glow off in the distance. It's getting closer. As it approaches, it gets bigger. This is it! The creature that's been leaving strange circular markings on fish, dolphins, whales, and even other sharks. Behold, the cookie cutter shark! Don't let its size fool you. It may be no longer than a bowling pin, but this creature is a parasite. It attaches itself to other marine animals using its neatly arranged serrated teeth. With one bite, it fills its belly, detaches, and goes on about its day. Its mobile snack also swims away with its life. The only evidence of this rendezvous, a cookie-shaped mark on its body. Don't assume you're safe in your submarine. These bold little guys have been known to go after subs too. You decide not to risk the shark punching a hole in the only thing keeping you from being squished to a pulp by the surrounding water. You journey on to meet other bizarre creatures lurking in the Bermuda Triangle. At twice the depth, you'll find the dragonfish. Unlike other deep-water inhabitants, these things produce light in the infrared range. Blue and green is what other fish stick to. This gives the dragonfish a huge advantage. It provides itself with light that other marine dwellers just can't perceive. Things that want to eat the dragonfish can't detect this light, as well as the critters the dragonfish likes to feed on. A truly unique deep-sea dweller is the vampire squid. Neither vampire nor squid, or octopus, this thing is a unique species of its own. It has the largest eyes compared to body size of any animal on the entire planet. When the vampire squid feels threatened, it curls its arms up and around its body. Essentially, the thing turns itself inside out. Another animal to avoid down here is the terrifying bobbit worm. It buries itself in the seafloor, leaving a small part of its body out. It waits for dinner time with its pincer-like mouth parts open. What's on the menu? Other worms and fish that can be 7 times bigger than the bobbit. It uses its 5 antennas to sense when lunch is close enough to snap. In an instant, the worm launches forward and grabs its lunch with its mouth parts. It's not done yet. Once it's got its jaws locked onto its lunch, the worm injects it with venom and pulls it down into the burrow to feast. One of the deepest trenches in the Bermuda Triangle is the tongue of the ocean. This is also the secret breeding grounds of tiger sharks. You'll instantly recognize them thanks to those darker gray tiger stripes on their sides. They're the second largest predatory shark species after the great white. And with a big size comes a big appetite. Marine mammals, smaller sharks, stingrays, and green turtles are all on the menu. If you ever come face to face with a tiger shark, hopefully not, remember this: you can tell the fish's age by looking at its stripes. They fade over time, so the younger the shark, the more pronounced its stripes. There's plenty of zooplankton in the Bermuda Triangle. These are, usually, small organisms that are essential to the ocean's food chain. But get this, if nothing ate them and they were left to grow out of control, zooplankton would cover the entire world in layers and layers in just 4 months. Oh, and the largest type of zooplankton is the jellyfish. Jellyfish were around long before dinosaurs. You probably know your body is 60% water. A jellyfish is 95%. So if it gets washed onto the shore, after a few hours, most of its body just evaporates into the air. There's also a jellyfish that lives forever. The immortal jellyfish can revert itself back to its polyp stage and then grow again. Sounds like something from another planet, but it's no space jelly. Those do exist, by the way. Back in the 1990s, NASA raised jellyfish in space to see what zero gravity does to them. They were just fine living up there in the cosmos. When they came back down to Earth, though, they had trouble adjusting. The European eel hasn't been to space, but it is quite a globetrotter. It travels all the way from Europe to the Sargasso Sea, where the Bermuda Triangle is located. In the larval stage, it just drifts around the ocean for as long as 3 years sometimes. It's also the chameleon of the sea. Over the years, the European eel changes color, going from translucent to yellow to metallic silver. They're nocturnal and secretive, pretty much the ideal companion to have when you raid the fridge at midnight. A giant squid over half the length of a football field once washed up on a Florida beach. Researchers suspected this behemoth came from the Atlantic Ocean near the Bermuda Triangle. Giant squids are the longest invertebrates, meaning they have no backbone. They also have the biggest eyes on Earth, ever. They're as large as a soccer ball. Another creature found near the Bermuda Triangle is Sterer's cave shrimp. They were so good at keeping to themselves that no one knew these creatures even existed until 2011. Some female cave shrimps carry an impressive number of eggs along with them. Scientists discovered one female had around 2,000 eggs attached to her body. The Bermuda petrel is the national bird of, yes, you guessed it, Bermuda. It's the second rarest seabird on the planet. In fact, people thought it was extinct until 1951, when they spotted a few on the island. It has an eerie cry that'll send shivers down your spine. The Nassau grouper can only be found on the coasts of South Florida. This fish lies in wait and ambushes its lunch of other fish, crabs, and lobsters. It's sort of like a vacuum cleaner because it inhales its food through its huge mouth. The fish has a cool defense mechanism too. Like the chameleon, it changes color when it feels it's in danger. Sometimes it takes on a lighter or darker shade of its own color to blend in with the environment. So, you may spot a Nassau grouper, or you may not. If you happen to visit the Bermuda Triangle, you'll probably see a hammerhead shark. They use that iconic hammer-shaped head to pin their lunch, stingrays, onto the ocean floor. The shape of their head also gives them better vision. They can see almost 360 degrees all around, above and below them. Well, save for one blind spot right in front of their nose. The hawksbill sea turtle may not look intimidating, but this guy will eat anything it can get its bird-like beak around. Sea sponges, algae, and even venomous jellyfish. A lot of the stuff on their menu is inedible for most, but their body fat can absorb the venom and toxins, so they go unscathed. The Bermuda Triangle is also home to green glowworms. They're not really worms, but larvae. They produce that bright light from an organ near their tail. This light makes smaller creatures come toward them, making it easy for them to catch their lunch. Most of the time, they look pretty ordinary, but they have an oddly fixed schedule. Every third night after the full moon during the summer, at an exact time, the glowworm lights up. But back to more nightmarish creatures of the Bermuda Triangle. There's the goblin shark, known as a living fossil because it's the only one left of its animal family. It's only about the length of your forearm and looks like nothing special. But watch closely as its lunch gets too close. Boom! The shark's jaw shoots out of its mouth and grabs onto the unlucky creature. Once the teeth have locked in, the jaw goes right back in the shark's mouth. And yes, you share the planet with this thing. You travel along the coast of the North Atlantic. In your Jeep, you're driving through the jungles and plains, taking amazing pictures of wildlife for your blog. And then, you accidentally come upon a place that isn't marked on any map. It's a bay with an azure coast. No human has ever set foot here. You've discovered a huge footprint of an unknown creature on the sandy beach. The size of the print is more than half of your vehicle. Suddenly, out of the tropical forest that borders with the beach, you hear a deafening roar. Palm trees crack and break as an unknown monster comes out of the jungle. To understand what it is, let's go back to the past. Hundreds of millions of years ago, shortly before the huge meteorite hit the Earth, a group of tyrannosaurs migrated to the coast of the North Atlantic. There, they got to a huge bay facing the ocean. For a long time, thanks to the natural protection of this place, they were safe from all natural disasters that had been occurring to the Earth at that time. The fall of a meteorite, the Ice Age, and earthquakes didn't bother the T-Rexes much. But they weren't the only monsters in this place. A group of megalodons swam to the bay for safety too. The most ferocious creatures of the oceans and of land were forced to live in one place. For millions of years, these monsters cooked in a huge cauldron called evolution. As a result, a new creature of destructive power appeared. The new hybrid beast has the very best of two ancient titans. Tyrannosaurus rex, with a length of 40 feet and weighing about 9 tons. It's roughly the size of a school bus. The king of dinosaurs had thick and strong neck muscles that could hold a large skull and jaws filled with 60 sharp teeth. And the thick tail of the T-Rex helped to balance the body. The bite force of the giant dino reached 12,800 pounds, which is as if an adult elephant sat on you. Strong enough, but it's nothing compared to the strength and size of the megalodon. The shark reached 50 feet in length, slightly less than a subway car, and weighed 75 tons, which is more than a tank. This is almost 8 times heavier than a T-Rex. The megalodon's jaws were filled with 300 sharp teeth, each the size of an adult human palm. And the bite force of a megalodon is 6 times stronger than the T-Rex's. And here, these two beasts become one, inheriting strong megalodon jaws, 360 teeth, and a massive Tyrannosaurus skull. The hybrid monster moves on 2 legs, but has fins on its back and the tip of its tail, as well as webbed toes. Its length from the tail to the skull is 70 feet, and its weight is about 90 tons. This is the largest creature in the entire history of the planet. After a blue whale, of course. Since it survived all natural disasters and had no competitors in the food chain, it's been able to live to this day. And here you see the Megalodon Rex, or Tyrannolodon, however you want. Its roar deafens you. The monster is coming at you. Every step feels like a little earthquake. You press the gas pedal, but the car doesn't go. The wheels are stuck in the sand. There's no choice. You leave the car and take an inflatable boat with a small motor from the trunk. At this moment, the Tyrannolodon grabs the Jeep with its jaws and crushes it like a cardboard box. The pressure, comparable to the weight of 6 adult elephants, is now being applied to your Jeep. The monster chews it like so much chewing gum. You can hear its sharp teeth cutting through the metal and rubber on the wheels. And then, the dinosaur spits the car out. Meanwhile, you run to the water, start the engine, and sail away on the boat as far as possible. The dinosaur runs after you and jumps into the ocean. It swims like a shark. You can see a fin sticking out of the water, the size of a small sailing boat. Fortunately, the monster isn't able to catch up with you. The megalodon's speed is about 10 miles per hour, but now it slows down almost twice as much because it has massive hind legs. The webbing on the legs helps to swim, but it's still a big weight. The physical form of the dinosaur doesn't allow it to accelerate too much. 8 miles per hour is its maximum. The fin is moving further and further away from you, but at this moment, the engine starts to rattle. Oh no! You remember you didn't fill the tank with fuel! This means that in a couple of minutes, you will be left alone with a huge predator. It won't see you since you've sailed far away. But the shark part of our monster has a great sense of smell in the water. You won't be able to escape its nose. You turn the boat and head for the shore. In the distance, the triangular fin is swimming around. You give it a wide berth to avoid being caught by Tyrannolodon. But you don't have enough gas. The engine shuts off. You start rowing with an oar, but now you're moving too slow. The monster is inevitably catching up with you. A huge dinosaur emerges from the water and falls back, creating a huge wave. It throws you to the shore along with the boat. The monster comes out of the water and runs after you. You have a chance to save yourself because the speed of the Tyrannolodon is about 10 miles per hour. which is slightly slower than the speed of the T-Rex. You run and easily find a shelter, but you realize in time this is a bad tactic, since the T-Rex part of the monster has well-developed smell receptors. It can sniff you out as well as a domestic cat. You just need to run as far as possible from this beast. You can hear the deafening roar of the Megalodon Rex behind you. Trees are breaking, the ground is shaking, but then it's suddenly all quiet. The Pteranodon's heart does hard work when it pumps blood through the huge dinosaur's body. When it runs, the heart works even more intensively. Because of this load, the dinosaur has little endurance. It quickly runs out of energy. Perhaps it's sitting on the ground right now and catching its breath. Tired, you also stop. You can't hear the dinosaur's footsteps. The T-Rex couldn't hunt small dinosaurs, as they easily ran away from it, and its approach was heard from afar. Only big plant-eating dinosaurs, as slow as itself, could become its dinner. It's the 21st century now, and the dinosaurs are extinct. So what does this monster eat? At this moment, you can hear the trees crunching a few feet away from you. Through the bushes and leaves, you can see a large triangular plate. You run to the side and realize that this is a real Stegosaurus. It seems the Jurassic period is still preserved on this piece of land. The herbivorous dinosaur, the size of a bus, calmly eats grass and makes noise. On the other side, you hear the heavy footsteps of the hungry Pteranodon. The Stegosaurus senses the upcoming enemy. It gets into a fighting position. Pteranodon is approaching. You run back to a safe place and watch the fight. Pteranodon runs out of the jungle. It growls, opens its massive jaw, and attacks the herbivore. The Stegosaurus quickly hits the enemy with its barbed tail. The Pteranodon falls to the side. Trees shatter into splinters, and the ground shakes under the huge monster. It gets up and furiously runs at the opponent. You decide to run away to buy yourself some time. You come to the shore, jump on the boat, and row as far as possible from the bay. The roars of two giant dinosaurs come from the jungle. You decide to sail along the bay and get to the beach with civilization. While you're sailing, you notice that it's suddenly become quiet. Too quiet. Waves appear on the surface, but there's no wind. The water bubbles, and you hear a terrible hum from the ocean depths. Through the blue surface, you can see several tentacles. They're huge, and they're on your every side. This must be a huge squid, or even a kraken. But then, you see the head of this monster is a shark's one. Now you definitely can't escape, because the Crackalodon swims out of the water. But this is a completely different story. You're strapped in a boat cruising down the Amazon River with the sun scorching hot. As you check out your map, your boat starts rocking back and forth. The water is starting to get more intense, so you hang on for dear life. You tuck your map in your pocket and try to take control of your boat. You strike some jagged rocks and duck low to avoid tree branches. Your boat strikes a large rock out of nowhere and capsizes. You're swimming in the murky green water. While you're trying your best to get ashore, your boat gets washed away. Underneath the water lies a whole new world of bizarre and dangerous animals. Candiru fish are snake-like creatures that can grow up to 16 inches long. Arapimus can weigh more than an adult male and are taller than most basketball players. They're the biggest freshwater fish in South America. They have a hybrid gill system that forces them to pop up to the surface every 5 to 15 minutes to breathe in oxygen for their large swim bladder. You swim out of the raging water and dry yourself off. Oh no, your map is completely soaked. There's no way you can get to your destination without it. You venture into the thick rainforest, shoving the branches and leaves away. As you get deeper, you notice something on a tree. It's barely moving, but it's got sharp claws and a raggedy coat. It stretches its arm to another branch and tries to pull itself up, ever so slowly. Sloths sleep more than half their days and only head down from trees once a week. They're so motionless, they sometimes grow algae and moss on their fur. The rainforest gets denser with each step until there's barely any sunlight illuminating the path in front of you. You notice a figure following you. With every branch you step on, you can hear a faint sound right next to you creeping around. You start walking a bit faster, and the sound catches up with you. You make it out of the dense part and tread along a narrow path until you reach a cliff. You can't walk normally here, so you pin against the wall and walk sideways to cross the hills. You slowly move across with the river 30 feet below you. You move your right foot, and some rocks fall into the river. You keep going and misstep. You're about to fall, but you hold on to a large tree branch and pull yourself up. You notice a couple of colorful poison frogs inches away from your fingers. Touching any of these frogs can be extremely dangerous and harmful, despite their amazing color patterns. The golden poison frog is one of the most poisonous animals in the world. One of them hops right next to you, so you let go of the branch and fall back in the river. The river is washing you down until you reach a calm current. Underneath you is a swarm of piranhas swimming with their sharp teeth. The red color on their skin is unmistakable, so you swim off like an Olympic athlete. Piranhas will eat anything that gets in their way, no matter the size. You grip onto a log and climb up a small rock to catch your breath. There's a huge electric eel underneath the rock. Despite their name, they're more related to catfish than eels. They use their powerful 600 volts of electricity to defend themselves and catch food. You're stuck, unless you're like the common basilisk that can run on the water like a jet ski. These incredible lizards have special webbing on their toes and can run the distance of a basketball court. You hop on a bunch of rocks until you reach the land. You continue walking along the riverbank until you come across a moving rock. You rub your eyes and see it moving again. It's a dinosaur-looking turtle that resembles a crocodile with armor. The mata mata is a freshwater turtle that disguises itself with its surroundings to catch prey. Their heads stretch longer than their bodies. You shimmy your way past it and continue. You head back into the rainforest and find a spot to rest. Wait, there are giant ants everywhere. They're the biggest ants in the world and can produce one of the most painful stings out there, even comparable to a wasp's sting. You immediately get up and find another place to rest. As you continue walking along, you notice the same feeling of something following you. You can hear some leaves rustling, but it's getting dark and there's no way of telling. You find a nice little spot to build a campfire and catch some Z's. But in the Amazon, everything is a threat, except for those cute capybaras wandering around. They live in groups next to water sources. They're also the biggest rodents in the world. You don't need to worry about them if you're stuck in the middle of the Amazon rainforest. Suddenly, you feel something slithering up next to you. You look down and see a massive green anaconda just about to constrict you. They are the heaviest snakes in the world and can grow up to 20 feet long and have a huge appetite. You get up and sprint your way out of there. All right, you found a decent cave to crash in. It's daytime again, and you're still alive. You continue walking along the rainforest. You were able to find some breakfast to boost your energy for the rest of the day. You spot something on a tree that looks like a branch, but it's actually a potu, a master of disguise that can spend days motionless on broken tree branches. These bizarre birds use those branches as their permanent home, where they lay their eggs and chill all day. You continue your way through the rainforest and see a Brazilian wandering spider crawling on a tree branch right in front of you. 8 of these species can be found in the Amazon area. They are some of the most aggressive and venomous spiders out there. So, you make a big detour and walk away from it. You feel someone walking next to you again, but you still can't figure out what it is. You see a steep cliff with a waterfall hitting a large lake ahead of you. Looks peaceful, until you see a team of black caimans gathering around the shore. They're the biggest predators in the whole Amazon ecosystem and feed on anything that moves. It's a good thing you're on high ground, otherwise, whoa! You slip and fall down the river, right on the deep end. So far, no caimans spotted you. You swim underwater and try to get to the opposite end of where the reptiles are. As you climb out and dry yourself off, you notice some large black spots on you. You try pulling them off, but they've latched on pretty hard. The Amazon giant leech finds its target by tracking movement and shadow. Once they attach themselves to the skin, it's extremely difficult to extract them. The best way to do so is to slide your finger next to its mouth and pull it off slowly. Ugh. You manage to get them off your body and see that the caimans are swimming towards you. You're pinned to the wall with the lake of hungry reptiles approaching. Suddenly, a pink dolphin jumps out of the water and splashes all over them. They can grow larger than humans and are the celebrities of the Amazon. Scientists think they get their color from the blood capillaries on their skin. The Amazon even has bull sharks swimming around. These carnivorous giant fish are threatening to humans and can swim in both saltwater and freshwater. These sharks prey on anything within their reach, including other sharks. The dolphin distracted the caimans, so you climb up the cliff and try to find the best way to escape. Opened jaws waiting for you to fall into the pit are right below you. You're lucky enough to escape to the top, but as your arms pull you up, the first thing that you see is a jaguar looking straight at you. It's the creature that's been following you this whole time. You get up while it starts circling you, timing its strike. You know that you can't take on a jaguar, nor can you outrun it, so you grab a large tree branch from the ground to defend yourself. It jumps at you, but you duck down in time. The jaguar lands in the water far away from the caiman crocs. It's a good thing these large kitties are excellent swimmers. You pick yourself up and continue. And to your surprise, you find your boat again. You fix it up and sail your way out of the Amazon. Whew!
Psst, run! Really, it's not safe out there. There's a saber-toothed tiger lurking around. You better be careful. What are you doing? Don't peek. Okay, just one little peek. How's this possible, you ask? That's because you're in virtual reality, of course. These cool but very dangerous-looking big cats were alive during the last ice age. What if they decided to show up at your doorstep out of nowhere? Knock knock, a saber-toothed tiger is waiting for you to buy its cookies. Meanwhile, the coelacanth, this massive-looking fish, comes from a lineage that's been around for over 300 million years. We thought they didn't exist anymore until 1938, that is, when a live coelacanth was found again. Since then, they've been roaming the waters of the east coast of Africa and the waters of Sulawesi, Indonesia. Man, I wouldn't want to go for a swim and meet one of these fellas face to face. Their jaw has an intercranial joint, which means their mouth opens up by a lot. This is so they can eat large prey, like me. Not good. They're huge, too. Imagine a fish that's as long as you're tall and weighing as much as an average human. The takahe, a flightless bird, was thought to be gone in the year 1898. They're very cute, small and multicolored, usually not taller than your knee. But picture this. You're out for a hike in the Murchison Mountains. Looking around, you spot the bird you thought was extinct. But there they are, as happy as ever, surviving and chilling. Whole colonies of takahes was indeed found just 50 years after they were pronounced extinct. Good job, tiny little birds. A singing dog. Ever heard of those? Riley does sing sometimes when he's bored or hungry, but these are real performers. New Guinea singing dogs. They've been only recently discovered again in the wild for the first time in 50 years. Still, they were never completely extinct to begin with. New Guineans made sure they were safe next to them. But in the wild, very rare and hard to catch a sight of. Look, there goes one. The New Guinea singing dogs are called so because of their famous high-pitched singing. They sometimes sing together too. A dog choir of sorts, where they all howl together. I bet they sing better than I do in the shower. Not going far from this area, we have bats, but these ones are sort of different. You see, their ears are enormous. I guess that's why they're called the New Guinea big-eared bats. Clever. The species was found again when one of them was accidentally caught in a bat trap. Until then, I guess they were playing hide-and-seek with us, because up till 1890, they had been thought to be gone. They're still not out of the danger zone because of habitat loss. Imagine you discover a fossil of a species you thought had been extinct for a long time, yet 2 years later, a whole living group of said species is found. Well, this is exactly what happened in 1977 with the Majorcan midwife toad. It's sort of brownish in color with darker brown that makes up its skin spots. Other than that, it's just a small toad with googly eyes. The group of live toads was found close to where the fossil was, on the island of Majorca. There aren't many of them left, about 500 in fact, and as of right now, they're declared vulnerable by the International Union for Conservation of Nature. Now, are you a fan of tortoises? You will be when you take a look at this huge beauty. It's called the Ferdinanda Island Galapagos tortoise. It hasn't been seen since 1906, but on February 17, 2019, we were finally able to look at one of these beautiful creatures. It's probably out there with a few of its mates right now, but they also don't allow themselves to be seen. We only know they exist because there's a few tracks and scents. With yet another frog, we have the horned marsupial frog. They're out and about in Ecuador, in the Chocó forest to be more specific. They're called this way because of their distinctive horns directly on top of their eyes. You know the pouch kangaroos use to carry their offspring? Well, the female horned marsupial frog also has that, except it's on the back, so it acts as sort of a backpack. They develop their embryos there, and when they're ready to come out, they hatch as complete infants, unlike regular frogs where they start out as tadpoles. One more toad, the starry night toad or harlequin toad. They're black and covered with loads of white spots all over them. Lost for 30 years, it was discovered back in 2019. Picture them as big bodyguards, water bodyguards to be exact. Oh, that's a very big toad on your screen. Well, for the Arhuaco people, that's exactly what they are, guardians of water. They also have their own name for them, Guna. Sounds like a cheese. When scientists found them yet again, they came across 30 of these little creatures, but initially, they were expecting only one. Well, what a nice surprise. Here's a tiger for you, although it doesn't quite look like your typical tiger. It's called the Tasmanian tiger, and it seemingly disappeared since 1936. But then, out of nowhere, people started seeing them out there in the wild just 5 years ago in 2016. They sort of resemble dogs more than tigers, or a fox maybe. Just take a look at its muzzle. Maybe even a mix of both. Then, a few others started popping up too. And if you happen to think you're seeing one right in front of you, but you're not quite sure, check if they've got stripes on their back. They're definitely out there, but still technically marked as extinct by the IUCN. Okay, picture a horse that looks straight out of a movie scene. Tiny, gorgeous fur, very well behaved. It's tiny, but it's not a pony. It's a Caspian horse. They have an interesting backstory to them. They were discovered by Louise Leyland, who got married to an aristocrat in 1957. Having moved to Tehran, Iran, she didn't quite like how the horses behaved there, so she took matters into her own hands. She took a few people with her, and off they went to the Caspian Sea mountain. And in there, they found 3 of these beautiful tiny little horses. Now, that's how the story goes. Coming up next, a possum that was found in an unexpected place. Guess where? You have 3 options to pick from: hiding in a ski resort, in the Australian outback, or in someone's apartment in the bathroom. Which one do you choose? You have 3 seconds. The right answer is a ski resort. Yes, this possum is called the mountain pygmy possum, and it's originating from Australia. So far, there are 3 different living populations of this tiny possum, but it was believed to be extinct until just 1966. There are fewer than 100 of them, so the IUCN has marked them as critically endangered. Also from Australia is the night parrot, an absolute delight to birdwatchers. Very beautiful, yet mysterious. These little fellas live in very remote areas. You can probably count on the fingers of your hand how many times these birds have been seen since they were found again in 1979. That's how rare they are. Have you ever seen a pygmy tarsier? Neither have I. It was only in 2008 that 3 of them were caught. Scientists don't really want to lose track of their movements again, so what they did was gift them with tiny little collars. This way they can live their life as happy as ever and will know they're safe. The last one I want to tell you about is the tree lobster, but as the name might mistakenly tell you, they're not really lobsters. They're just big black bugs with huge legs. Their extinction story is a sad one. In 1920, a cargo ship got stuck on Lord Howe Island, and it had rats aboard. These rats fled the ship and ran straight to land. Even though tree lobsters are bigger than most insects, they're still relatively small compared to rats. The poor things never stood a chance. Still, in 2004, life shone again for these distinct critters. A pair of Australian scientists were out and about on the island and came across 24 of them. All of them were living beneath one single shrub. Hey, if there's enough space for everyone, it's not small, it's cozy. Bottom line, it's better to be distinct than extinct. Don't you agree?
The legend goes that a dwarf named Fafnir was famous for his strength and courage. Because of his qualities, he was tasked with protecting their kingdom. Dwarves were known to gather a lot of wealth, so a bit of added security was a must. I mean, they lived in a house made from gold and precious gems. But Fafnir also had another special talent. He was able to shapeshift. Tricked by Loki, the Norse spirit of mischief, Fafnir was taken over by his greed and the shine of his father's treasure. He decided he did not want to share any of it, not even with his father or his brothers. He stole it and ran away all by himself to a place he'd be hard to find, the middle of the desert. To protect his wealth, Fafnir transformed into a huge dragon. His new appearance looked like a huge snake, powerful and scary. His magical powers did not end there though. Because the dragon couldn't fly, he also spread poison all around his new home, so no one had a chance to survive if they wanted to take his gold away. Fafnir was soon defeated by a young hero named Sigurd. The legend of Fafnir tries to explain why family is more important than greed. It also shows the many magical powers dragons possess. But the most interesting part is that it's quite a good example of how dragons came to be in our tales. But hey, this is just one of the many stories mentioning dragons. Just switch on your TV or peek into any bookstore, and you'll surely stumble upon dragons somewhere. Variations of dragon-like creatures have been described in stories from all over the world, from Asia to Northern Europe. Most of these creatures are depicted with reptile-like bodies, wings, and claws. And the scariest trait of them all, they can breathe fire out of their mouths. The name of these creatures comes from the Latin word draconum, which translates to huge serpent. But let's take a trip down memory lane to see how it all started. An Asian historian, for example, discovered some fossils back in the 4th century BCE and decided that he'd stumbled upon dragons. It's easy to understand why he got so confused if you look at a fossilized stegosaurus. It was 30 feet long, 14 feet tall, and covered in armored plates and spikes. The Nile crocodile might have gotten mistaken for a dragon too. It still exists today and lives in sub-Saharan Africa. But it may have been more popular in ancient times. When reaching maturity, Nile crocodiles can grow up to 18 feet long. But that's not all. It can even walk with its body off the ground, and some were even pictured standing on their 2 back legs. Goannas are dragon-like lizards that live in Australia. Large as they are, they also have razor-sharp teeth and claws, and are also known to even produce venom. It's easy to see why goannas may be the source for the Australian version of dragons. When humans first discovered whale bones back in the day, we had no idea these animals lived in the sea. Given their size, we surely must have thought they were dangerous. And because we rarely see whales, if we don't go underwater of course, they were poorly understood and easily mistaken for dragons too. Probably the most interesting source of dragon mythology is actually the human brain. In a book called An Instinct for Dragons, there was a theory which claimed that dragons existed in almost all ancient cultures because we had evolved to fear large predators to survive. We aren't the only mammals to do this. Monkeys have an innate fear of snakes and large cats too, for example. When you combine these natural traits with folklore, you get a lot of dragon stories everywhere, adapted to each region. Reptilian beasts with magical powers date back as far as the origins of human civilization itself. I'm talking about ancient Mesopotamia. Humans back then used to believe in all sorts of creatures, but their head spirit was Marduk, the patron of the city of Babylon. If you look at the artwork from back then, Marduk was depicted with a snake-like dragon at his side. It could be either nice or vengeful, depending on what mood it was in. If you want to sign up to become a dragon, the first thing they'll ask you at the interview will be if you can breathe fire, of course. So scientists have tried to look into some ways that could make it real for dragons to breathe out fire without damaging their throats. To do that, they examined the bombardier beetle. This eccentric insect can pack up some really hot substances in its belly. Once the creature gets bothered by something, it shoots out a fiery load of chemicals. In all fairness, it's not really fire, but it does burn, so it's close enough. Going back to dragons, they'd need to have similar glands in their throats to produce the same effect. But where do dragons come from? They didn't just appear out of nowhere, regardless of the source you consult. Some tales, like that of Fafnir, say that even humans can turn into dragons, but the most popular theory is that dragons start out as eggs. Some sources even draft a series of stages a dragon has to go through during its life. Everything starts with hatching. Dragons are said to eat their way out of those shells and break the sides of the egg. Then there's the wormling stage, which is what dragon specialists, or dragonologists if you like, call a newly hatched dragon. It's still small and weak, but don't worry, it can take care of itself pretty well. The rest of a dragon's life stages are pretty self-explanatory. There are grown-up dragons, then ancient ones. A dragon's life ends when it reaches the twilight stage. Some sources claim dragons never stopped growing. Others even say they never reach the end of their lives. They just pass on to another type of spiritual existence. Dragons are known to be the symbol of a lot of different things, but that all depends on their origin. In some regions of Asia, they are known to bring luck, power, and wealth. To become a powerful warrior in Britain, you'd need to first defeat a dragon. That's why you often see them on flags. The flag of Wales, for example, has a large red dragon on a green and white background. Western stories aren't as nice to dragons. They are often seen as evil and vengeful. Another myth associated with dragons is that they love gold and precious stones. This greedy side of their temperament seems to date back to ancient Greece, where dragons were tasked with guarding treasures. Some of these guarding dragons were seen in such tales as The Hobbit and in the Harry Potter series. As for dragons' magical abilities, they also vary a lot. Some were said to have blood with supernatural properties. Some were rumored to be able to speak. Others were famous for their wisdom. A lot of dragons in ancient literature could fly or shapeshift, even into humans. Some real-life creatures got their names thanks to bearing a resemblance to dragons, like the dragonfly that has more than 5,000 subspecies we know about. It got its name from folklore tales, as Europeans in the Middle Ages saw it as an evil insect. Dragonflies were accused of some really nasty things, like biting people's eyes and mouths. But the creature that resembles mythical dragons most is a reptile called the flying dragon. They're seen in wooded areas of Southeast Asia. They don't really have wings per se, but parts of their ribs are elongated to support some extra skin that allows them to leap through the air between trees. Those wings are also brightly colored and contrast with their brown bodies.
You decided to go scuba diving for the first time. The water is clear and the sun is shining on the seabed. You take a few selfies and the fish swimming by when suddenly the ocean goes pitch black. You look up and, oh my, what is that gigantic animal? It's definitely not a shark, not a whale. Is it a turtle? Yup, but fear not, it's not gonna hurt you. If you had lived on this same Earth about 72 million years ago, then maybe this could have really happened to you. Scientists have recently found the fossils of a gigantic marine turtle that could have grown as big as 12 feet. If you don't have any idea of how big that is, let's see some examples. That's the average length of a hippopotamus, 6 golden retrievers, or 2 Michael Jordans stacked on top of each other. The turtle's scientific name is an homage to that old-school sea monster called Leviathan. Maybe you remember this from old-school history lessons. The Leviathan is supposedly a mythical creature that would swallow entire ships or people that were deemed too greedy by the creature. Can you imagine being swallowed by this humongous sea turtle? No, thank you. The fossils of this gigantic creature began to be excavated between 2016 and 2021, all the way in northeastern Spain. The first fossil was located by a hiker in the Spanish Pyrenees, and it was around 8 inches long. The pelvis of this turtle alone measured around 35 inches. It would definitely be one of the biggest turtles today if it hadn't gone extinct. FYI, the largest living sea turtles today can reach up to 6 feet in length, which is already pretty big. Now, how about a gigantic prehistoric scorpion? I bet most people here are not huge fans of these creatures, especially since they're poisonous, which is why the thought of a 9-foot-long aquatic scorpion might be the stuff of nightmares. Let's just say that if they hadn't gone extinct some 400 million years ago, lakes and rivers would be much more dangerous places for humans today. These gigantic insects were considered to be apex predators in their time, hunting everything from fish to other animals, even of their own kind. Yikes! I got goosebumps just imagining these creatures. Should we thank the asteroid that hit our planet now or later on in this video? Another prehistoric animal that would shock humans if it were still alive is the so-called Megatherium, a gigantic sloth. This huge sloth is believed to have grown up to 20 feet long, and its weight could be up to 8,000 pounds. It was found in the woodlands and grasslands of South America. The creature used to stand on its 2 feet in order to reach leaves on high branches. These giant sloths had huge claws. They helped them climb trees. I gotta say, I feel uncomfortable imagining these elephant-sized sloths climbing trees. Oh, of course, some dinosaurs will make our super-sized creatures list. But before that, here's a fun fact. Did you know some dinosaurs are still alive today? Scientists have proven that birds are classified as theropod dinosaurs. Such infamous creatures as the T-Rex and Velociraptor belonged to this group. I'm sure you've heard these names even before you watched Jurassic Park. The Velociraptor is that scary dino that breaks into the kitchen. Well, they evolved, gained some feathers, and turned into various species of birds we know today. That means that any bird from chickens to those little blue ones is a direct descendant of dinosaurs. Now, does the name Spinosaurus ring a bell? You can see this huge dinosaur in some museums today. Its fossils, I mean. The Spinosaurus was one of the biggest land predators to walk Earth. Actually, to walk its land and water, since scientists believe that this dino was semi-aquatic. It fed mostly on meat, which means humans would be its natural prey if it lived today. This meat-eating dino lived around 90 to 100 million years ago. It was about 60 feet long, 12 feet high, and weighed up to 22 tons. Its head was around the size of 8 bowling balls and was shaped like a crocodile's face. Basically, the Spinosaurus was a big African elephant with the face of a crocodile. Just kidding. But that would look funny though, wouldn't it? A much more attractive dino was this guy. It's considered to be the largest dinosaur that has ever lived on our planet. What made it so big was its extremely long neck and very long tail. You wouldn't want to stand behind this creature, believe me. If it decided to swish its tail, you'd get catapulted very far away. This creature lived around 100 million years ago, and its fossils were first found in Argentina around 2012. The dino measured 120 feet from head to tail, which made it almost as big as an American football field in width. And have I mentioned it weighed almost as much as a space shuttle? A staggering 75 tons. If it had been a carnivore, it would have probably been the greatest predator. But this big guy was a peaceful herbivore that had such a long neck that it could eat leaves from high trees. Cute, right? We must also talk about the Shastasaurus. As the name suggests, this animal is popularly known as the Mount Shasta lizard. Even though it was a marine reptile and probably never set foot on the mountain itself, this dino was usually around 23 feet long, but there was a specific strand of this species that could get as big as 69 feet long, about the size of the great blue whale. This made it the biggest marine reptile to have ever lived. A fun fact about the Shastasaurus is that scientists believe it didn't even have teeth, which means it could only feed on soft-bodied prey, such as squid, for example. The next animal on our list is the blue whale. Believe it or not, the biggest living animal on Earth actually started small. These days, the average mature blue whale can reach up to 100 feet in length and weigh up to 200 tons. That's more or less the weight of 40 elephants put together, or 30 Tyrannosaurus rexes, or 2,670 average-sized people. Blue whales have to eat up to 50 million calories per day to support that body. That's the equivalent of 30,000 Big Macs, just FYI. But blue whales weren't always this big. They actually evolved from a four-legged mammal that lived on Earth around 48 million years ago. Their ancestor was called Pakicetus, and it was only 6 feet long. Here's a fun fact. To be able to live in the water as one does today, the blue whale had to go through some intense adaptations. A blue whale can replace up to 80 to 90% of oxygen in its lungs each time it takes a breath. A human replaces only up to 15% for comparison. It allows these animals to dive for up to 1 hour at a time, down to a staggering depth of 330 feet. Elephants were bound to make the list. Elephants are currently the largest land animals on Earth. They can grow to be about 13 feet tall and weigh up to 7 tons. That's pretty small if we compare it to the other animals that once lived on Earth, right? But if we placed a 6-foot-tall human next to an elephant, we'll see it's not at all that small. African elephants are bigger than their close relatives, Asian elephants, and they have a similar lifespan to humans, up to 70 years. Pokemon might have made us collectively wish that salamanders were real-life dragons, although they're not. They can still be pretty cool though. There's a giant species of salamander that is known to be the largest living amphibian. They can grow to be as long as a regular-sized human, reaching up to 6 feet. I bet that wouldn't be a pleasant underwater encounter.
Now, thanks to new fossil discoveries and technologies, we're getting to learn more and more about the biology of dinosaurs. Some people don't need to know more than the fact that a few of them were colossal, terrifying, and vicious. But for those of us that do, the use of comparative biology, pigment analysis, and powerful new X-rays have allowed us to gain insight into specific features such as their colors, eating behaviors, and the shapes of their tongues. Yes, that's right, the shapes of their tongues, which, for a long period of time, was something of a mystery. This is because soft, fleshy dinosaur parts are hardly ever retained in fossil form. But thanks to the discovery of some surviving hyoid bones, which are situated at the root of the tongue in front of the neck, we now have some insight. Most animals have this hyoid bone that anchors the tongue. The shape and complexity of the bone determine how free-moving the tongue can be. Scientists have discovered that nearly all dinosaurs had simple tongues that laid flat and were extremely similar to the tongues found inside the mouth of a crocodile today. Yeah, this crocodile. Go ahead and take a closer look. Nah, just kidding. Come on back. Let's take a look at some specific dinosaurs and start with the Brachiosaurus. Let me stick my neck out on the line by guessing that most of you will be familiar with this dinosaur because of its neck. You know, the one which was typically 30 feet in length. Despite its neck being its most distinctive feature, its name actually translates to arm lizard in Greek. It's common knowledge that the Brachiosaurus was one of the largest dinosaurs to ever have lived. On average, it reached 76 feet in length and 40 feet in height. That's roughly the length of 2 school buses and as high as a 4-story building. None of which were around in the era of the big guy here. Fragmentary leg bones and vertebra of even larger dinosaur species are known, but these skeletal remains are too incomplete to determine their exact size. So this guy may have been the largest dinosaur ever. A renowned herbivore, thank goodness. The Brachiosaurus is thought to have eaten up to 880 pounds of dry plant matter every day. Most of this was made up of coniferous trees, ginkgos, and cycads. This target might have been hard to hit for this dinosaur, as researchers have learned that its teeth were spoon-shaped and not ideal for chewing food. This means that the creature would have swallowed vegetation whole, as its teeth were suited to stripping it but not breaking up large chunks of plants. This, along with the dinosaur's body shape, suggests that the Brachiosaurus would have liked to feed as quickly as possible. Dinos like these didn't always make use of their ability to strip towering trees when dining. The Brachiosaurus traveled in herds, moving to the next location once they had exhausted all of the local vegetation. And I mean all of the local vegetation, not just that which hung high on trees. It's likely that the creatures supplemented their diets with vegetation at lower levels, especially after they'd done a number on all the nearby trees. This method of feasting was the most energetically appealing for this giant. By munching on lower vegetation, researchers believe that the dinosaurs saved up to 80% in energy compared to when foraging for high-up food sources. They have also discovered that the nostrils of a Brachiosaurus were on the front of its face and not the top. This is because we now know they roamed the fertile floodplains in their respective herds. For decades, it was believed that these creatures lived in deep, watery swamps. Let's look at another common misconception about a popular dinosaur. Please put your hands together for the Tyrannosaurus rex, which is arguably the most famous of all dinosaurs. Discoveries from the past 100 years have revealed that theropods had heavily feathered skin. Theropods are the family of dinosaurs to which the T-Rex belongs, so naturally, people began to think that the creature would have been covered in feathers as well. However, a study from 2017 took skin impressions from the iconic dinosaur and found no evidence of the structures required to support feathers. If a T-Rex did have feathers, they would have been limited to its back. Researchers accept that other large dinosaurs of the same family as the T-Rex have been discovered with their remains covered in feathers. An example of this would be the Yutyrannus dinosaur. But as of now, the accepted theory is that feathers weren't a common feature of T-Rexes. This makes it easier to believe that feathers were exclusive to smaller tyrannosaurids and were there as a means of keeping the creature warm. For a long period of time, researchers thought feathers were an exclusive feature of the theropod family. But this theory has been debunked. Just like the kid at camp who was kicked out of the top bunk. You know, debunked. Anyway, fossil evidence discovered in Siberia now suggests that multiple different family groups of dinosaurs had feathers. The Siberian fossils in question belong to another species of dinosaur, Calindrodromeus zebicolicus. Oh, you think I mispronounced that? Okay, prove it. Now, this dinosaur, I'll call her Calinda, had a pelvis structure superficially similar to that of a bird and was roughly 4.5 feet long, about as tall as a fridge. Since the purpose of feathers on dinosaurs was for warmth, it's quite possible that dinosaurs from cold weather climates had more feathers than their counterparts in warm weather climates. In general, bigger animals struggle less with keeping themselves cool, so it's likely that any of the large dinosaurs who lived in these warm climates had no feathers at all. Smaller dinosaurs who lived in cold climates, on the contrary, had plenty of feathers. We now even understand what some of the designs and patterns of these feathers on dinosaurs looked like, thanks to the discovery of an ornithomimus, complete with feather and skin impressions. The name of this dinosaur is derived from Greek and actually translates to bird mimic. They were typically 11.5 feet in length, nearly as tall as a giraffe, and despite being omnivorous, had no teeth. Its other distinctive features include 3 fingers, which were all unusually the same size and length, and despite their thin-boned skulls, they also had large brain cavities. Their legs were extremely long, in particular their foot bones. Combine this with their toothless beaks and long necks, and yep, it must have looked a lot like an ostrich. Although they're not as big as the Brachiosaurus or dinosaurs in general, they are bigger than any other bird in the world. And it wasn't just the body limbs of an ornithomimus that made it resemble an ostrich. They also had very similar feather patterns. Their heads, necks, and lower legs were mostly bare of feathers, but the rest of their bodies were well coated in downy plumage. This is what you call a bird's layer of feathers as a whole. It's possible, like an ostrich, that the dinosaur would have used this unusual feather pattern to regulate its body temperature. Despite some dinosaurs possessing feathers like birds, on top of also being their distant relatives, dinosaurs didn't have the type of feathers required to fly for most of their existence. Feathers found in fossil impressions or preserved in amber have allowed researchers to gain insight into why these creatures weren't very aerodynamic. The structure of these feathers appears to be very simple, with a poorly defined and flexible central shaft. These feathers would have better served any dinosaur as a fashion statement, as they would have helped attract the attention of other dinosaurs. These feathers also would have had the ability to regulate body temperature. Surprised to hear that dinosaurs had ostrich-like feathers? Wait till I tell you that their prehistoric distant reptile cousins had something that looked like fur. Allow me to introduce you to the pterosaur. Its name is derived from Greek and translates to winged lizard. Just like dinosaurs, they were initially thought to have scaly or leathery skin all over their bodies. But over the course of the 20th century, fossil examinations revealed that many parts of a pterosaur's body were furry. The wingspan of a pterosaur could reach the length of over 23 feet, about as long as a London bus. Its toothless jaw was very long and resembled that of a pelican. How could something that looks like a pelican be so terrifying? These creatures were coated in pycnofibers. Those were simple structures, feather-like in composition, but strand-like and fuzzy like fur. Further research suggests that some parts of the pterosaur's body had more complex kinds of feathers with branching strands. If this is accurate, it would be the first time feathers were found on an animal that was neither a dinosaur nor a bird.
How heavy is the largest living snake? How can a snake eat a whale? Get ready, I'm about to answer these questions. Before the last ice age, giant mammals like mammoths ruled the world. The modern animal kingdom we're familiar with was shaped around 55 million years ago. I mean, there were still 1,000-pound bear dogs living from Asia to America. But modern whales, for instance, began to appear later. I'm saying modern whales because, surprise, surprise, whales weren't always fully aquatic. the ancestors of the ocean's biggest animals once walked on dry land. They had 4 legs and lived on the coast. Now, I want to introduce you to a snake that used to eat these whales, the Paleophis, a genus of a marine snake. Scientists say it's hard to understand how big the Paleophis was due to its fragmentary fossil record. They assumed that it could have reached up to 40 feet long. Its fossils were found in different parts of the world, from England to Morocco and Virginia, USA. The Paleophis is extinct now, and sea snakes today are only about a quarter of the size this majestic creature used to be. So no need to worry about this underwater monster. But there once was an even bigger snake, the Titan boa. It was around 50 feet long and most likely weighed over a ton. It used to live in what is now known as northeastern Colombia around 60 to 58 million years ago. Scientists say that it mostly fed on fish. Another giant animal that lived in the past was the black Gigantopithecus. These primates aren't related to gorillas. They lived in the area of modern China. Some people believe that they're still alive, but so far, no one has laid eyes on them. Some people even go further and say that the stories of Bigfoot or Yeti are based on these animals. This rodent became extinct about 2 million years ago. Its main habitat was South America, more specifically, Uruguay. What's astonishing about this species is that it was the largest rodent ever known. It was bigger than a bull. Scientists believe that it weighed up to 1,000 pounds. A distant relative of this rodent is still alive today. It's called the pacarana. It's a rare animal that lives in South America. It weighs up to 33 pounds and measures up to 31 inches, not including its cute and fluffy tail. The Arthropleura was an insect that lived in prehistoric times. Imagine a giant millipede measuring up to 8 feet in length. Here you go. It was one of the largest land animals of its era, about 315 million years ago. The Arthropleura's shell was covered with tough plates. These plates were there to protect the creature from damage. Most of the time, it burrowed into the ground to avoid becoming some other animal's dinner. Meet the megalodon. Millions of years ago, this shark lived in the ocean and ate other marine creatures. It had wide teeth, and its jaws were so powerful that the animal could finish off its prey with the force of its bite. It was one of the largest sharks to ever exist. Yet, this predator also went extinct. Scientists don't really know the reason. This made me wonder why animals were so big in the past. Nowadays, smaller creatures flee or hide from predators. But apparently, it wasn't like this before. Many centuries ago, animals didn't just run or hide, they fought back. Research suggests that this behavior may have been the most important motivation for prey to grow bigger. A study compared the skulls of ancient animals to those of their modern peers. The skulls of predatory animals have become shorter and narrower, while the skulls of the animals they hunted have become longer and broader. This means that predators learned to become experts in hunting, while prey worked on developing their defense skills. You see, a larger body size was a great advantage because it made it harder for predators to take down the animals they hunted. The bottom line, self-defense made prehistoric animals larger. The second reason why ancient animals were larger is related to their bones. They had hollow bones, which are lighter than solid bones. This type of bone allowed large animals to move quickly. Let's take sauropods. They were a dinosaur subgroup. Sauropods had giraffe-like long necks and snake-like long tails. Compared to their body size, their head was really tiny. But since their bones were quite light, they could move around without having to carry additional weight. The eating habits of these animals were also related to their body size. When experts examined the fossils of one extinct mammal species, they found out that these animals had a diet that was high in nutrients and low in fiber. And this mammal was the largest land animal of its period. In other words, following this diet, mammals could grow to be very large. There was plenty of food out there, so they didn't have to worry about finding it. Fun fact, these animals also took chewing out of the picture. They could swallow their food in large pieces instead of taking small bites. Environmental conditions also played an important role in the evolution of larger animals in prehistoric times. Those animals tended to live in warm, moist climates that provided them with a lot of food. They didn't have to compete for food sources. Researchers believe that because of these conditions, natural selection worked in a certain way. I mean, body size was more important than such traits as agility and speed. Oh, and did you know that large animals tend to produce more carbon dioxide? And ultimately, a bigger volume of carbon dioxide increases the amount of vegetation in the animal's habitat. As for the abundance of oxygen in the atmosphere at that time, it could be another vital element for some animals' growth. A good but scary example of an animal that benefited from the high levels of oxygen can be the cockroach of the Paleozoic era. At that time, cockroaches were the size of modern house cats. Now this one would give me the chills if I ever faced it. Ugh. What about today? Well, there are over 3,000 species of snakes on Earth. The smallest snake in the world is the Barbados thread snake. It's only around 4 inches long when fully grown, and the largest one? It's the reticulated python. This snake reaches around 20 feet in length. The longest python was discovered in 1912. It measured 32 feet long. As for the largest and heaviest reticulated python, it was named Medusa. Medusa was approximately 25 feet long and weighed 350 pounds. These reptiles lived in Southeast Asia in rainforests, woodlands, and grasslands. Don't be confused though, the reticulated python isn't the heaviest snake in the world. This title belongs to the green anaconda. It weighs approximately 500 pounds. Green anacondas are found in South America and Trinidad in damp, humid areas. I have a bonus for you. Here is a flying snake. You can find these snakes in Southeast Asia. They don't fly like birds, of course, but they do use the power of flight. They can go as high as 300 feet. They leap from tree branches into the air. Once they take off, it's all about aerodynamics. Their main technique is flaring their ribs and pulling in their abdomens. While airborne, they undulate from one side to another and slightly up and down. This motion helps snakes to turn and glide. Why bother with all this if they can just crawl in an old-school way? Scientists aren't sure, but they believe it might be related to escaping from predators. This way, they move from one tree to another without having to get down to the ground. Every now and then, people discover fossils of animals that lived millions of years ago. These ancient discoveries continue to capture our imagination. Which of these animals would you like to see alive? In 1952, an Air Force plane called C-124 Globemaster II crashed into a big mountain while flying from Washington to Alaska. Sadly, everyone on board, 52 people in total, didn't make it. The bad weather at the time made it hard to find the crash site, and even later, any attempts to locate it failed. But in 2012, a helicopter crew doing a training mission spotted the pieces of the crashed plane on a glacier called Colony Glacier in Alaska. They started looking for more pieces and confirmed it was indeed the missing plane. Since then, every summer for about a decade, different military groups have been helping in an operation called Colony Glacier. They've managed to identify 40 out of the 52 people whose lives were lost in the crash. The soldiers taking part in this mission take their promise seriously to never leave a fallen comrade behind. They believe it's their duty to bring back those who didn't make it. Another discovery comes from the Alps. In 1991, some hikers exploring the picturesque Alps stumbled upon a human body. It was half frozen in ice at the top of a mountain pass between Italy and Austria. At first, the local police thought it might be a mountaineering accident. But in a few weeks, archaeologists started claiming that this guy might have lived more than 5,000 years ago. They eventually gave the frozen fellow the nickname Ötzi. He was named after the nearby Ötztal Valley. He's become quite famous as the oldest ice mummy on record. Ötzi's frozen state might not be as unique as we thought, and that's where things get really cool. Archaeologists have another theory. See, at first, everyone was convinced that Ötzi marked the start of a cooler period because he had been frozen in the ice without any interruptions since he had lost his life. Yet, over the past few decades, glaciers and ice patches worldwide have been melting away like ice cream on a hot summer day. Not just Ötzi, but other ancient relics like bodies, hunting gear, horse droppings, and even ancient skis started to appear. So, archaeologists say there are similar sites. They found quite a few, and they all fit perfectly into this growing field of glacial archaeology. It seems like as the world warms up, it will show even more ancient secrets from the deep freeze. Moving on to another amazing discovery. In 2018, William Taylor and Nick Jarman were exploring the snowy slopes of Mongolia's Altai Mountains. They found an ancient treasure trove hidden in the ice. Inside the trove, they found a well-preserved 3,000-year-old arrow shaft adorned with ochre markings. It was in pristine condition, a rarity for organic items that old. They found other items too, like a bronze arrowhead with bits of animal sinew still attached. All of these relics had been untouched for hundreds of years, since they had been locked in the ice. In Mongolia, rising temperatures have melted ice patches that remained frozen for centuries. Similar discoveries have been made in the Yukon, US, Italy, Siberia, and Norway. Thousands of sites have been identified. Yet, scientists are racing against time to document and preserve these artifacts before they're lost forever. The study of these artifacts challenges the definition of these environments as wildernesses and shows how indigenous people coexisted with nature there. Sometimes people find simple items too, as simple as a sandal. This one, discovered on one of central Norway's mountain passes, indicates that people used this route roughly 1,700 years ago. This suggests that there was less snow and ice in that area back then. The sandal, dating back to around 300 BCE, resembles Roman sandals of that era. Again, in Norway, hunters found an iron sword high up on a mountain, more than 5,250 feet above sea level. There's no nearby burial site, and it's puzzling why someone would have a sword in such a remote location. Archaeologists speculate that the owner might have become lost. Then, in 2011, unusual objects resembling giant slingshots began to emerge as the ice melted. Radiocarbon dating suggests that this particular object was crafted around 400 BCE. It measures over 3 feet long and has knife cuts. Those puzzled archaeologists until one team member recognized them as tang, or pliers, used to secure loads on sleds when transporting hay or leaving for animal food. People in the area used hay sleds with pliers until the 1950s, when tractors became more common. Now, let's get back in time to thousands of years ago. We can easily do that by looking at this woolly mammoth. This creature looks a bit like a cherished but slightly worn-out toy. This ancient giant, whose heyday was 39,000 years ago, is the best preserved mammoth ever found. Even its signature shaggy hair is surprisingly well preserved, having been trapped in glacial ice until its recent discovery in Siberia. This remarkable animal is stepping into the limelight in Yokohama, Japan. Scientists are running tests that might bring this extinct species back to life. When they stumbled upon this female mammoth, they uncovered a hidden treasure, a sample of her blood preserved beneath the ice. So they believe this ancient blood could hold the key to resurrecting the mammoth. They also found well-preserved muscle tissue. She was between 50 and 60 years old when she met her icy fate. The discovery of mammoth blood has reignited debates about the ethics of bringing back extinct creatures, like in Jurassic Park. Their ambitious plan is to implant an egg into a living elephant for a 22-month pregnancy, hoping that at least one living mammoth cell might survive. Hop on, we're going to the French Alps. We are at a spot not far from where an Air India plane tragically crashed 46 years ago. We're accompanied by a diligent mountain rescuer and his neighbor. They went to this area after a bunch of tourists had noticed a strange-looking thingy on a glacier. It was a bag. The Indian embassy in Paris got wind of it, and it was all set on getting that bag. What makes it kinda cool is that it had diplomatic mail and Ministry of External Affairs written on it. The Air India flight was on its way from Mumbai to New York when it took a nosedive in January 1966. It took 117 people on board down with it. Guess what else was inside the bag besides the soaked diplomatic mail? It had a stack of old Indian newspapers. So, alongside those, they also found bits of the plane's cabin, a lone shoe, and a bunch of cables. Totally unexpected treasures on that mountain. During the summer of 2013, scientists stumbled upon a message left behind by a geologist named Walker, who had placed it there 44 years before. That message sort of served as the man's last testament. He passed away just a month after hiding the bottle in the rocks on the island. The content of the message was quite astounding. In 1959, Walker had measured the distance from those very stones to the glacier's edge, and it clocked in at a mere 167 feet. By 2013, that distance had ballooned to 400 feet. Researchers are convinced that this stark contrast between the two measurements underscores the consequences of ongoing global warming. Imagine the melting ice in Norway's mountains as a time machine revealing a treasure trove. Nearly 800 Viking artifacts tucked away for over 1,000 years have been unearthed. They give us a peek into the bustling trade networks of the Viking era and the critical role of the mountain passes in this ancient commerce. Among the finds are leather shoes, cozy woolen mittens, stylish tunics, feathered arrowheads, horseshoes, walking sticks, and kitchen gadgets from the Viking chef's toolkit. There are even Viking pack horse souvenirs. These artifacts provide us with insights into ancient travel habits and the peak times when those paths were bustling with activity, and give us a glimpse into the lives of adventurers.
Imagine a planet where every breath you take electrifies your body like a shot of espresso. The sky above you is an intense shade of blue, while colossal trees stretch towards the heavens, their vibrant green leaves growing at an astonishing rate. Daily exercise becomes a thrill like no other. With the abundance of oxygen, you become a supercharged version of yourself. Running feels effortless as you dart across the landscape, lifting weights that would normally seem impossible. It's as if the world itself is infused with a surge of energy. Everything is moving faster. The wildlife surrounding you is equally affected by this oxygen overload. Animals roam the land in majestic proportions. Their massive frames are propelled by speed and agility. Picture yourself in a pulse-pounding chase with an oxygen-charged cheetah, racing against a predator that could put a Ferrari to shame. Now you may wonder how such a wild scenario could ever be possible. Well, let's see. Oxygen is the powerful fuel that keeps life going. It makes up about 21% of the air we breathe, and every breath we take delivers these tiny molecules to our cells, giving them the energy they need to thrive. Without oxygen, our cells would struggle, and our bodies would fall apart. But that's not all. Oxygen is a superstar that works for all kinds of living things, from tiny bacteria to giant elephants. It's even important underwater, where it enriches the oceans. Amazing creatures like plankton and algae produce lots of oxygen, creating a thriving underwater world. But to fully understand the impact of high oxygen levels on the planet, prepare for a journey back in time. Recently, scientists have made an astonishing discovery. They tested rocks from 2 different places that were really far apart. And can you believe it? These rocks held tiny pockets of gas that showed how oxygen levels shot up by almost 1/3 in a very short time. It was like a breath of fresh air. So they studied these rocks and found that oxygen levels back then were much higher. Imagine lush landscapes, towering forests, and gigantic swamps that stretched as far as you could see. During the Carboniferous period, oxygen ruled the atmosphere at an impressive 20%, just like today. But over the next 50 million years, its levels shot up to a crazy 35%. Can you imagine what that did? As oxygen surged, something incredible happened. Huge forests grew all over the land, creating a breathtaking green world. And massive swamps took over low-lying areas, making the landscape look surreal and otherworldly. At the same time, carbon dioxide levels dropped. Normally, when things break down, microbes release carbon dioxide into the air. This gas acts like a warm blanket, trapping the sun's heat and raising temperatures. But in the mysterious swamps where these giant plants were buried, the microbes couldn't do their job. The result? The planet got really cold. Who would have thought that a breath of fresh air could have such power? The scientists are still trying to figure out why this happened. But one thing is certain, it wasn't just happening in one place. It was a worldwide phenomenon. It was like the planet was playing a funny game with the climate. But let's go even earlier. We see the first North American dinosaurs making their grand entrance. High oxygen levels are what gave a big boost to the rise of mighty dinosaurs in North America and beyond. Picture tropics filled with the magnificent giant creatures. Obviously, dinosaurs didn't just appear out of nowhere. They took advantage of a changing environment that was perfect for their evolution. Oxygen levels played a huge part in this dinosaur party. As oxygen levels rose, so did the size of these incredible creatures. They started small with predators like Chindosaurus, and soon after, huge dinosaurs like sauropods took over the land. Then, 65 million years ago, dinosaurs disappeared and mammals took over. And here's the interesting part. Mammals never grew as big as dinosaurs. So what's the explanation for this? Mammals, and humans are mammals too, by the way, are special because we can regulate our body temperature. But that comes at a cost. We need a lot of energy to stay warm compared to reptiles and dinosaurs. Dinosaurs didn't bother with temperature control, so they could focus on growing big. The biggest dinosaurs were 10 times larger than the largest mammals. It's like a game of anything you can do, I can do 10 times bigger. Dinosaurs might have had similar limitations with their sizes, but those were much less strict. Before the dinosaurs' extinction, mammals were very small. Many mammal species disappeared along with the dinosaurs. But survivors took advantage of the open ecosystem and rapidly diversified into various body sizes. However, after 42 million years of growth, mammals reached a size plateau. This happened on all continents, most likely because of the temperature and land area. Colder environments allowed mammals to grow larger. Balancing body size and heat became challenging. Land area also played a role in sustaining big populations. But making animals bigger isn't the only thing high oxygen can do. This humble gas is a true jack of all trades. It also acts as our loyal bodyguard, protecting us from harmful UV rays and other dangers from space. Without oxygen, we would be defenseless against space threats. Oxygen also has a fascinating role in shaping the weather. It teams up with its other atmospheric buddies to make the sky go wild with tornadoes, hurricanes, and thunderstorms. They mix and mingle in the air, creating just the right conditions for these exciting weather adventures to happen. And these adventures can be dangerous, but they serve an important purpose. They help distribute nutrients and organic matter, carrying soil, leaves, and debris to new places. So what if we decided to mess with nature and crank up the oxygen levels to crazy heights, 30%, 40%, or even 50%? Well, too much of a good thing can become dangerous. Oxygen toxicity is when too much of this gas causes big problems. It's like eating loads of candy. It's fun at first, but soon enough you'll regret it. Surprisingly, an overdose of oxygen can leave you struggling for breath, like a tired dancer in desperate need of a break. At first you might feel a burst of energy, but it doesn't last. Dizziness sets in, as if you've been spinning on the dance floor for hours without stopping. In extreme cases, too much oxygen can even harm your body. making you feel like you've crashed into a huge truck. So while oxygen is always with us, giving us life, it's important to appreciate its delicate balance. Don't put on your special breathing gear. Also, we wouldn't be the only creatures to suffer from this oxygen extravaganza. Mammals, for example, will struggle to adapt to these extreme levels. The balance of power among species will change drastically, and winners and losers will fight for survival in a world that's spinning out of control. And we'll need stronger shelters to deal with these gigantic animals. We'll have to stay nimble and avoid danger. Amidst all the chaos, there will be astonishing adaptations. Birds will fly higher than ever before, reaching heights that would amaze even the clouds. Also, get ready for more natural disasters and delicate ecosystems hanging in the balance. Fires will start quickly and rage fiercely, making wildfires a constant threat. Even a small spark from a campfire could cause disaster. We'll need to rethink our cooking and heating methods to stay safe in this oxygen-filled world. But let's not forget the other side of the oxygen story. If we had a planet with low oxygen, only around 15%, we would face a completely different struggle. Every breath would be difficult, leaving us tired and struggling for air. Physical activity would become extremely hard, and our memory and focus would suffer. So let's be grateful for the oxygen levels we have now. They're the perfect balance for us to thrive. In this exhilarating journey through an oxygen-rich world, we've experienced breathtaking wonders and discovered the delicate balance of our planet. Let's cherish the magic in every breath, respect the interplay of oxygen and life, and embrace the thrill of this remarkable ride called life.
You call your beloved cat to have his dinner, Sir Scratchy. Suddenly, you hear loud stomping. The dishes on the dinner table clink with every thump. A painting's fallen off the wall. Is it an earthquake? No, that's a cat the size of a pony walking into the dining room. It needs 10 times as much food as the average cat. And it purrs like a tractor. No, Scratchy, stop rolling. You'll turn over the cupboard. Well, this is one possible scenario for the evolution of animals in the future. Climate, water, oxygen in the air, and even gravity are factors that influence the course of evolution. For example, scientists predict that some bird species will gradually lose their warm feathers. In the future, they will basically look like sphinx cats with beaks and wings. The same thing might happen to our pets. Gradually, their fur will become shorter until they're completely bald. Urban pests like pigeons and rats will become even bigger, the size of a cat. A few million years ago, rats were barely the size of your little finger. That's because they hid in small burrows and had to be nearly invisible to large predators. Now, they live in comfortable cellars that humans have built. They can create cozy nests there, and the large amount of food in trash cans keeps them from starving. So they feel quite comfortable and continue to grow in size. Even more, rats have already developed oily fur so that dirty or toxic water can run off them without harming the rodents themselves. Plant-eating mammals, on the other hand, might have it worse. Their food will gradually diminish. With time, there will be fewer forests and greenery on the planet, and some plants will disappear altogether. Eventually, animals like deer, elephants, giraffes, and others will get smaller and smaller because of the lack of food. In addition to shrinking, mammals will have smaller eyes so they don't lose water from their bodies, and their ears will become larger to lose heat through them. Their tails will grow longer to swat away insects. As land mammals become smaller, birds will increase in size. That's because they'll be able to include shrinking animals in their diet, and the muscles of birds will become much stronger because they'll have to fly long distances in search of food. Animals in hot and dry places are more likely to learn how to get water from the air. To do so, they'll need long sails or skin flaps. Early in the morning, when the air is coolest, moisture will accumulate on these new body parts, and some lizards will evolve their collars to a much larger size. Then they'll be able to collect more rainwater. As for the marine world, we can already see some fish jumping out of the water to catch insects. In the course of evolution, fish fins may become longer and stronger so that they can leap further. And gradually, those fins will turn into wings to make them truly flying fish. Perhaps in the future, these fish will hunt small birds. To do that, they'll learn to hold their breath for longer and fly much higher. But the big fish and marine mammals will have a hard time. The ocean will heat up, and some species will begin to disappear. The largest inhabitant of the aquatic world, the blue whale, which is the size of 2 school buses, will shrink in size because there will be less food for it in the ocean. But the population of lizards and reptiles will thrive. They're good at absorbing heat. And with climate change, there will be more insects on our planet, which means more food for lizards. They'll start to increase in size. But now, they'll have to defend themselves against big birds. Their legs will become longer and stronger, so they'll be able to run a lot faster and not get eaten by a bird. And the insects? Well, they'll just explode. Insects will probably live in huge swarms and fly around looking for food. And they'll be angry and hungry because their usual source of food, mammals, will have either ceased to exist or shrunk in size. Humans will change too. Scientists predict that between 1,000 and 1 million years from now, we will completely lose our hair. Our limbs will become thinner and longer, and will be about 7 feet tall. Our feet will most likely lose their toes because they're no longer needed to keep our balance. Our head and brain will become more like a balloon, and our lifespan will be more than 100 years. Because humans are at the top of the food chain and don't take part in natural selection, we'll gradually become similar to each other. In tens of millions of years, all humans will probably look the same. Plus, we're developing genetic engineering technology. Luminous rabbits, incredibly sized cows, web-weaving goats, super muscular pigs, and more. But we're more interested in how animals will evolve on their own. So, fast forward ahead in time. Humans have long lived on other planets and in other galaxies. Earth has long since become home to animals and plants. The only traces of humans here are giant cities made of metal and concrete that are buried deep underground. And up there, incredible creatures like the Necropteryx live. It's something between an ostrich and a vulture, the size of an adult human. Its long and powerful beak is its main tool for protection against predators and for eating. Their strong legs with long claws make them excellent runners. This creature can walk dozens of miles in a day. Necropteryx needs warm fur or feathers. Without humans and the greenhouse effect, the temperature on Earth has dropped. But with a warm jacket, they'll be able to survive even a new ice age. And like ostriches, they reproduce by laying eggs. This is a parashrew. It's like a common shrew, a couple of inches long. But it has an unusual feature, a parachute on its tail. While little, they live in their parents' nests, but when they leave them, they launch themselves into the air and then open a parachute made of thin fur. The warm currents of air rise up and carry them. They can spend up to 24 hours in the air. Then, they'll nest elsewhere, and their babies will leave their home the same way. The waka. Waka waka. This animal looks like a striped giraffe with only 2 legs. It'll be one of the fastest creatures on our planet. No predator can beat it in a race. Plus, their eyes are perched high on their head, and with its long neck, the waka can see a threat even when sitting in tall grass. Terabytes are descendants of termites that will appear on Earth in 200 million years. If they see a threat, they'll spew a stream of chemicals, something like acid, from their huge head. Even the biggest predators will be afraid to approach them. Reed stilts are about 3.5 feet tall and weigh almost as much as an adult human. Thanks to its striped coloring, a reed stilt is almost invisible in the reeds. It walks on its thin legs through marshy terrain and feeds on small fish. Its long neck and sharp teeth allow it to dash into the water, almost cobra-like. It catches fish and swallows them almost whole. But all of these predictions are very speculative. There are billions of factors that influence the course of evolution. The course of evolution could go the other way at any time. For example, an asteroid hits the Earth, causing a mass extinction and changing our planet's climate. A small percentage of surviving organisms begin to adapt to the new conditions. In a few million years, we'll have animals that none of us could have even imagined.
Boom! An explosion of supersonic waves, interplanetary heat, dust, fumes. The Earth's atmosphere has been invaded by a cosmic rock the size of Everest. A few seconds ago, this rock, weighing trillions of tons, was hurtling towards Earth. It could fly from New York to Anchorage faster than you could fry yourself an omelet. This monster's name? The Chicxulub Incident. Epic name, right? 66 million years ago, it crashed into the Earth. Back then, dinosaurs ruled the planet, but not for long. The epic collision took place in modern Mexico, in the Yucatan Peninsula, right near Cancun, where the dinosaurs were vacationing. Well, probably not. Still, the huge space rock hit the ocean, but even all that water couldn't stop the inevitable. The collision caused a huge amount of energy to be released. The horror on a planetary scale had begun. Imagine a mini-sun lighting up the surface of the Earth with tsunamis the height of the Statue of Liberty bursting from the epicenter of the watery impact. Not good. The blast blew through the surface of the Earth. It was as hot as an oven and burnt everything in its path. The impact provoked a colossal earthquake and serious volcanic activity. A bunch of volcanoes simultaneously released hot lava and ash into the prehistoric skies. Millions of tons of ash and soot poisoned the air. This formed a huge ash cloud in the atmosphere, which blocked out the sun's rays for several years. The long winter had begun. Only there wasn't any snow falling from the sky, but rain made of sulfuric acid. Yes, the Chicxulub incident might just be the most important thing that ever happened in the history of our planet. Even more than YouTube. Back then, there were loads of volcanic eruptions, a lot of flammable oxygen in the atmosphere, constant temperature changes. It was the perfect and worst time for all of this to go down. So, how are we so sure about all this? Well, the asteroid left an absolutely huge crater on the planet's surface. Today, this scar is hidden under the Gulf of Mexico. Scientists found a lot of places on Earth with abnormally high levels of iridium. This metal is very rare on Earth, but it's in a lot of asteroids that scientists have examined. Scientists studied some 66 million-year-old rocks. In the layers of rock, they found dust, the same dust that comes from asteroids. This could only have happened if a huge asteroid had crashed into Earth. The catastrophe led to the extinction of not only the dinosaurs, but also the asteroid. It was so hot at the point of impact, part of the asteroid just disappeared. A lot of water vapor and carbon dioxide shot up into the atmosphere. But the biggest problem, sulfur. It got kicked up by the asteroid impact and flew up into the air. These tiny sulfur particles blocked out a lot of the sun's rays. Without the sun, a lot of plants disappeared and the climate eventually got colder. The immense heat turned stones into glass. Scientists call these things tektites. The energy of the impact threw them up into the skies. After a short flight, the tektites fell down to Earth. But it wasn't pretty. Rain fell too, only instead of drops of water, you'd have seen hot glassy fireballs. They bombarded the planet's surface for days. The tektites set fire to everything. Scientists found evidence of this all over the world, not just near the collision site. But a lot of things from back then are still a mystery. Some scientists think that Chicxulub wasn't even an asteroid. It might have been a comet. Asteroids are mostly made of stone and metal. Most often they kind of look like a potato. A comet contains rock, metal, and ice. Comets look like dirty cosmic snowflakes, complete with ammonia, methane, and carbon dioxide. Comets sometimes come from the Oort cloud. It's a huge cloud of ice and debris around our solar system. From time to time, comets break free from the pack and head towards our sun. According to scientists, this special comet flew right past Jupiter. The gravity of that huge planet accelerated the comet even more. It flew towards the sun, gaining more and more speed. The comet's outer ice shield started to evaporate, and it probably gave off a lot of dust and gas, which made it look like it had a tail. The sun's gravity eventually shattered the comet apart. One of the fragments flew through space and crashed into the Earth 66 million years ago. So, asteroid or comet? The truth is, we'll never know. What we do know is that the Earth was seriously unlucky to be in its path, and it was never the same again. The catastrophe stopped the development of 75% of life on Earth. Some bigger marine animals, like crocodiles, turtles, and fish, survived the impact. Out of all land animals, the only ones to survive were the ones that were, on average, smaller than the modern raccoon. That includes a bunch of special species of dinosaurs, the ancient ancestors of birds. Scientists believe they survived for two reasons. After the huge impact, it took a long time for plants to start growing again, and a lot of animals didn't survive. Most remaining animals didn't have enough food. But these dinosaurs had a beak. With its help, they could split open nuts and dig seeds out of the soil, so they survived. The second reason is that these lucky guys had bigger brains. Some people think that they were able to cooperate with each other and quickly adapt to the new conditions. Other life forms survived too. Fungi and mold survived underground and underwater. Gradually, the darkness cleared away and ferns began to take over the lifeless landscape. After a few thousand years, forests started to reappear. The animals that survived were pretty much all inconspicuous and small creatures. They lived in burrows, safe from all that hot ash. Before the collision, mammals had lived in the shadow of dinosaurs. But with all the dinosaurs suddenly gone, things were about to change. Mammals were able to take over. They began to dominate life, at least on land. Back to the moment when everything changed. Turns out, it wasn't the size of the asteroid that made it so powerful. It was more about the angle in which it hit the Earth. If the angle of impact had been different, the dinosaurs might have even survived the catastrophe. So, what would that have looked like? Well, let's travel back, way back. Oh no, there's a giant asteroid heading for Earth. Oh, wait, never mind, it missed. Whew. There are plenty of earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcanic eruptions every day, but dinosaurs don't mind that much. No big deal. Fast forward a few million years, and most of these ancient lizards have changed and are now unrecognizable. Thanks to a couple of ice ages, many dinosaurs are now totally covered with feathers to protect them from the cold. Mammals exist, but they're few and far between. You see a lot of bats in caves. There are tons of rat-sized rodents in the forests. During the day, they hide in the undergrowth or in burrows. At night, they go out in search of food. There are no horses, no elephants, or other large mammals. Why become large and eatable when there are so many dangerous reptiles with huge fangs around? There are no whales in the sea. Parrots, hawks, and pigeons are nowhere to be seen. But pterodactyls 2.0 whiz past you constantly. Some are about the size of a helicopter, while others are no larger than a swan. There are plenty of primates, but they're in no hurry to climb down from their trees and walk on two legs. No venturing out into the savannah, no evolution into Homo sapiens. In this alternate reality, open spaces are very dangerous. But then again, so are forests and trees. Nowhere is safe. To get some delicious primate treats, many smaller dinosaurs learned to climb trees. This was already happening back in the Cretaceous period, right before that huge asteroid just missed Earth. Whew, that would have been an epic collision. Dinosaurs have grown wiser since that near miss. Some are even as smart as a modern chicken. A large brain uses a lot of energy, and that's not always a good strategy for survival. Safer to keep brains small and keep making those teeth bigger and pointier.
Every species on Earth, you, me, and that nasty neighbor of yours, is destined to go extinct someday. Just like what happened to the woolly mammoths and saber-toothed tigers. Stats aren't bright. Scientists say that 99% of all animals that ever lived are now extinct. Hey, what's that look on your face? Going extinct is not the end of the story. Now listen up. Mammoths might make the greatest comeback ever and even be the key to saving humanity. Nope, they won't give away free money so that we don't have to work anymore, but they can sorta help the weather situation on our planet. In the Arctic tundra, there's this ground called permafrost. It's like soil in the form of ice. Soil turns permafrost when it stays super cold for 2 years straight. But now, permafrost is actively thawing out, and it's bad news for, well, everyone. Because while thawing, it releases a lot of carbon into the air. But what if we had large animals like mammoths there today? They would churn up the soil. The ground would freeze more deeply in winter. And then, in summer, a layer of grass would help keep the ground cool and prevent the permafrost from melting. Some scientists think that's a great solution. So now there's a company in the US that's trying to bring mammoths back to life. Okay, you got me. Not actual mammoths, but a sort of hybrid between an elephant and 1% mammoth DNA. It would be a northern elephant. Getting mammoth DNA is easier than you might think. They actually only went extinct about 10 to 14,000 years ago. Scientists are hoping to have their first elephant-mammoth hybrid by 2027. Let's hope it doesn't turn into a real-life Jurassic Park. Ah, Australia. A nightmarish place and a home to the most fascinating creatures on Earth. But here, the sad fate befell the Tasmanian tiger, also known as thylacine. Don't mix it up with the Tasmanian devil. That one is living and thriving. Nope, the thylacine was a marsupial predator that used to chill in Australia, South Tasmania, and New Guinea. It was a nocturnal who preyed on other marsupials, like kangaroos. In the 30s, the farmers suddenly claimed that thylacines were eating their livestock. Looking back at it now, that was probably an exaggeration. But humans started to hunt poor thylacines until they were all gone. And then it turned out that hunting away the important predator isn't the brightest idea. Who would have thought? You see, thylacines kept things in check by eating bad animals. So once they disappeared, the Australian wildlife was basically doomed. 35% of total mammal extinctions on Earth happened here. That's an awful world record. I know it sounds gloomy, but hey, maybe we can fix this. Remember that company we mentioned? It wants to bring back the thylacine too. Luckily, many thylacine embryos are still preserved in jars, like some creepy pickles. If we bring them back to Tasmania, this could help revive the entire ecosystem. Would you be happy to see them back in the wild? Me too. And I would also be happy to see you hitting those like and subscribe buttons so you can keep up with amazing facts all year round. We also have some huge dreams about tiny creatures. Take a trip to Mount Hotham Ski Resort in Victoria, Australia, and here you can find the mountain pygmy possum, a tiny bundle of cuteness. These guys are super rare. We even thought that they were extinct. All we had was their fossils. But then, some skiers spotted a possum in a log pile at the ski lodge in 1966. Imagine suddenly making a great discovery while chilling on vacation. These little possums can spend 7 months of the year sleeping under the snow. They wake up occasionally to eat some stored food, and then they wake up in the spring to eat even more, find a mate, and go back to sleep again. What a relatable fella. Since they've made it into this video, you can guess they're pretty endangered. There are less than 2,000 left in the wild, all because their current homes don't fit them that well. But hooray, we can help them too. You see, their ancestors lived in lowland forests about 20 million years ago. So maybe mountain possums could live better if we moved them there? Of course, we can't just take them to the woods and expect them to survive. Instead, scientists want to slowly release possums into the forest and check up on how they get on with it. Let's hope these cute creatures will adapt to woodland life. The southern gastric brooding frog, also called the platypus frog, was quite a unique creature. It was discovered in 1972 in Queensland, Australia. Back then, this fella shocked the scientists with its super weird birthing practices. Check this out. The mother frog swallows her eggs, turning her stomach into the womb. Then she doesn't eat at all for 6 weeks straight. I could never. Meanwhile, the tadpoles hatch in her stomach, start to grow, and eventually get so big that the mom literally has to breathe through her skin. And then she literally spews out her offspring left and right. Bleh. But this insane process is a great evolutionary achievement, which is why it drew everyone's attention. But the wonder didn't last long. By the mid-80s, all known species of these frogs vanished from their natural habitats. Why? We have no idea. There are many theories, but almost no evidence to back them up. In any case, over the years, these guys officially became extinct. But it all changed in 2013. Scientists started a groundbreaking project named the Lazarus Project. Now they want to resurrect these frogs to learn cool cloning techniques from them. Are you guys ready to copy their genetic preservation method? Yeah, me neither. But let's dive deeper. Literally go in the water. Meet the coelacanth. This creature lived in the oceans back when the dinosaurs roamed our planet, and didn't even notice the asteroids. These guys are the Methuselahs of the sea. They can live up to 100 years, and they don't even start thinking about leaving offspring until they're around 55. At least they've got plenty of time to live for themselves. We actually thought this creature had gone extinct about 65 million years ago. But then, the first Latimeria specimen was discovered off the coast of South Africa in 1938. Now they're known as living fossils. And these fish are enormous. They weigh around 200 pounds. They're also super stylish, with those lobe-fished paddles that make them look like disco balls. Oh, and they're great aerialists. Thanks to those versatile fins, they can even do headstands and swim belly up. The coelacanth is also a bit of a homebody. It's not very energetic and likes to live in underwater caves during the day, only coming out at night to snack on smaller fish and squid. Another animal who's literally me. Now we're trying our best to preserve this species, and I won't be surprised if it outlives us all. And finally, let's talk about the largest and most awkwardly looking flightless bird from New Zealand, the South Island takahe. The tale of the takahe started way back in the Middle Ages. Humans accidentally hunted them all away, and by the late 19th century, it seemed there were none of them left. But then, they were rediscovered in New Zealand in 1948. Poor guys did all they could to hide from us in the mountains, but we still got them. But it's different now. Since then, we've been trying our best to save them from extinction. There's a takahe recovery program going on, and it shows great results. They managed to greatly boost the number of birds in the wild. As of 2023, the takahe population has grown to around 500 birds. They're now considered nationally vulnerable, not nationally critical. It's a little progress, but progress nonetheless. Let's keep it up. The problem with that asteroid that destroyed dinosaurs was not that it fell, but where it fell. This colossal space rock found the worst place where it could land. Also, the angle at which it hit the ground was the most unfortunate. If it had fallen vertically, there would have been less destruction. But it fell at such an angle that it threw a huge amount of dust into the air. After the disaster occurred, tons of soot started burning. 65 million years ago, only 13% of Earth's surface contained the right amount of sulfur and oil needed to form a colossal amount of soot. If the asteroid had fallen on the other 87% of the territory, dinosaurs could still be living today, but it hit the worst place and lifted 1 million tons of burning material into the sky. A cloud of incandescent particles covered the sky and set off on a journey across the mainland. Then, these particles settled on the ground and caused large-scale fires. Trees were burning and sending more soot into the sky. But the asteroid collided not only with rocks, it fell on the coast in a place where the seabed was filled with sulfate. As a result of the collision, it started burning, which caused the release of sulfuric acid into the atmosphere. The air became poisoned. It seems the dinosaurs didn't stand a chance. And now, let's imagine the asteroid falling in another place, somewhere in the middle of the ocean. Huge waves flooded part of the land, but almost all kinds of dinosaurs survived. Or even better, the rock could have fallen somewhere in the desert and left behind a giant crater. That's all. Yes, several dinosaurs passing by wouldn't have survived the collision, but the situation wouldn't have been so critical in general. So, giant lizards remain dominant on our planet. They don't allow other animals to develop since Tyrannosaurus and other ferocious reptiles hunt mammoths and other ancient creatures. The population of mammals is decreasing. Velociraptors are fighting for territories with saber-toothed tigers and giant bears. A struggle for survival between dinosaurs and other animals begins. Then, the Ice Age comes, and some reptiles don't survive. Then, new players enter the field. Those are humans' early ancestors. Living side by side with dinosaurs is difficult. Lizards attack settlements and caves, so people have to build high walls for protection. By the way, the Tyrannosaurus poses less danger to people than you might have thought. According to the latest research, many creatures were able to run away from this monster. Yes, you probably saw how easily they caught up with cars in the movies, but it wouldn't be as scary in reality. Paleontologists and biologists have analyzed the strength of dinos' bones and found out that the creature couldn't reach high speeds. The maximum it was capable of was running twice as slow as a field athlete. Thousands of years have passed. People have learned to live with dinosaurs. They've even managed to tame some lizards. They've domesticated herbivorous dinosaurs to develop agriculture. Triceratopses and bulls now plow fields together. Imagine farms swarming with diplodocus or brachiosauruses. People climb their long necks and pick fruit from high trees. Stegosauruses protect pastures from wolves and velociraptors. Dinosaurs with shells, such as ankylosauruses, help people cross deserts. They, along with camels and donkeys, carry heavy loads. People share the planet with ancient lizards and live in harmony. The situation in the seas and oceans is much worse. Sea reptiles attack wooden ships and catch all the fish. Imagine that you're sailing to another continent with tons of grain, fabrics, fur, and other goods. And then a giant mosasaur appears on the horizon. It's one of the most powerful sea lizards. A great white shark looks like a small fish next to it. The creature could easily defeat a megalodon. And then it comes across a wooden ship. It bites into the deck and pulls the whole boat underwater. Water dinosaurs are the main obstacle to communication between countries. This slows the progress down for 100 years. People built metal ships to withstand the attacks of the mosasaur. And finally, they managed to establish sea connections. A similar problem occurs when the first planes take off into the sky. Imagine you're flying on a passenger Boeing. You look out of the window and see a pterodactyl. Wait, it's impossible. These winged lizards aren't so fast, but they can catch up with a helicopter or some old biplanes. This poses a serious threat to flights, so people install sound protection systems on board each aircraft. Pterodactyls hear irritating ultrasound from a distance and fly as far away from it as possible. People equip submarines and ships with the same sound shields. Then, after people have learned how to defend themselves from dinosaurs, another problem appears. Lizards are the kings of wildlife, so they displace all other animal species. Dinosaurs run across African savannas, and lizards with fur live in cold winter forests. Lions, wolves, and bears are not the rulers of the wild. Rhinos fight with Parasaurolophuses. Stegosauruses attack hippos and take away their territories. Venomous dinosaurs live in jungles. Lizards that can climb trees scare monkeys. Imagine a reptilian ape jumping from one branch to another. To save regular animals from extinction, people have to control the population of predatory reptiles. Huge parks and nature reserves appear in all countries. People transport dinosaurs there and separate them from other wildlife. Dinosaurs seem to be completely under control. When the danger caused by giant reptiles passes, people begin to breed smaller, harmless lizards. Someone buys a chameleon, and someone keeps a Microceratus at home. There are dinosaur exhibitions. People take these creatures for a walk as if they were dogs. Some people take selfies with reptiles, go shopping, and sit in cafes with small lizards. Dinosaurs aren't formidable now. They're kinda cute. People ride horses, camels, Parasaurolophuses, and Pachycephalosauruses. Of course, many have tried to tame velociraptors, but failed. Those are dangerous reptiles and they don't know how to obey. Taming them is almost as difficult as taming an alligator. But dogs and cats are still more popular because they're more intelligent. The brain of a dinosaur is almost the same as that of a chicken. But who knows, if they had lived to this day, perhaps they would have evolved into smarter creatures. Just imagine if dinos were intelligent. In this case, people would have a big problem. Some scientists think that even if a meteorite hadn't destroyed the dinosaurs, they wouldn't have survived to this day. They needed to carry their own colossal weight at all times. It was an enormous load on their bones and joints. Most dinosaurs wouldn't have been able to survive the Ice Age with such characteristics, but smaller lizards might have succeeded. Fast and agile dinosaurs, such as velociraptors and Pachycephalosauruses, would have survived, but in what form? Could dinosaurs have already evolved into something else? Look at the good old chicken. Many scientists believe it's a direct descendant of the formidable Tyrannosaurus. Somewhere deep inside the bird's DNA, there are genes that the dinosaur had. Yep, it's hard to believe, but look at the chicken's body structure and how it walks. Remove the plumage, cover the creature with scales, and give it toothy jaws instead of a beak. And now, you have a mini T-Rex in the coop. And by the way, not only chickens might be the relatives of giant lizards, many birds are dinosaurs' living descendants. Surprisingly, alligators, snakes, crocodiles, and monitor lizards are not as close to ancient reptiles as pelicans, storks, and other flying creatures. Over millions of years of evolution, the paws of dinosaurs turned into wings, and toothy elongated jaws ended up as beaks. The genetics of birds is the key to understanding dinosaurs. Pelicans are similar to pterodactyls, ostriches to velociraptors. Perhaps many other animals also share some genes with ancient lizards. If the meteorite hadn't fallen, all dinosaurs would have evolved into completely different, unusual creatures. Scientists want to carefully study the DNA of birds and try to reverse evolution with the help of genetic engineering. They hope to breed dinosaurs out of eggs one day. But to do this, they need to find a specific genome that hasn't changed over tens of millions of years. It hides in the DNA. And it's not so easy to find it and extract it. Do you think we will see powerful reptiles by 2050?
Hey, it's possible that Jurassic World is not just a fantasy. Dinosaurs could really be walking, swimming, or flying around somewhere out there, but not on Earth. Some scientists think there may be planets far, far away from our solar system where slightly different versions of T-Rex and other dinosaurs live. They got the idea based on the fact that our planet used to have about 30% higher oxygen levels than today. That's why complex and intelligent life forms like dinosaurs could develop in the first place. They also want to explore basic building blocks that are the reason why we have life on Earth. These building blocks are something we know as amino acids. They make proteins, sugars, and genetic material, RNA and DNA. They're consistent and mainly exist in one shape or orientation. There are two ways they can be oriented, right and left. That means they mirror each other, just like our hands. It's something we call chirality. For life to exist, proteins must have one form, which means they can be oriented right or left. On our home planet, almost all living things, from the smallest bugs to whales and elephants, have amino acids with a left-handed orientation. We're not exactly sure why things are set that way, but there's a theory that's because of meteorites that crash-landed on Earth 4 billion years ago. They brought specific kinds of amino acids and some other organic materials to our planet, and somehow set the pattern we have today. Maybe we could use special telescopes we created to search planets, especially those where conditions are similar to how they used to be on Earth back in time when dinosaurs existed. In that case, it would be better to watch them from a safe distance, because considering what they might look like, researchers say it might be a safer choice. That's a cool idea, but it's still very tricky. The history of life on our planet, especially that of dinosaurs, involved many catastrophic events and mass extinctions. There's always more room for new theories about dinosaurs. One of them says oil comes from dinosaurs. Interesting, but not true. Oil formed from the remains of sea animals and plants from millions of years ago. This was way before dinosaurs appeared. Tiny organisms ended up at the bottom of the sea. As bacteria decomposed animals and plants, they removed most of the oxygen and some other elements from them. It left behind only a sludge, which was mostly made of hydrogen and carbon. As time passed, those remains became covered with many layers of silt and sand. When the depth of the sediment increased to 10,000 feet or even more, heat and pressure turned the remains into natural gas and crude oil. It's possible that dinosaurs lived or fell in the sea and later became petroleum in the same manner. But no one has ever found crude oil containing their skeletons. So this is just an unproven theory. Then there's the feathered dinosaur theory, which, unlike the previous one, seems to have more foothold in reality. Back in 2010, researchers found evidence that 100 million years ago, there had been a dino species with ginger feathers. Another group of scientists claimed there had been a different species from 150 million years ago. Those dinos had freckles and reddish-brown feathers on the tops of their heads. The color patterns probably had their purpose. Maybe it was a way to communicate with other representatives of their species or to attract mates. But years later, scientists studied the Microraptor, also called a feathered dinosaur. They realized it had probably been more like a bird than a dinosaur. The key point is how birds replace their feathers. Birds that fly have to replace their feathers in a specific order, otherwise they won't be able to fly very well. And the Microraptor's fossils showed that this creature had changed its feathers in a similar pattern. So they're not really sure which category this animal falls into. Dinosaurs that had feathers shed a lot of their skin piece by piece, like dandruff. Hey Bob, looking a little flaky there. Need a new shampoo? Yeah, they didn't shed their skins like lizards do, as if they take off an old suit. When we talk about dinosaurs, we usually don't picture them as social creatures, more like isolated ones similar to lizards. But some researchers discovered an 80-million-year-old collection of clutches in the Gobi Desert. It means there were colonies of dinosaurs that protected their nests and guarded their young, similar to birds. Crocodiles are known for doing that too. Pterosaurs were flying dinosaurs, and pelycosaurs were fin-backed ones. Some studies have shown that these two species use their exaggerated head crests and sails or fins to get to their potential partners. There are many theories about their crests and what they were needed for, though. Some experts believe that was how dinosaurs regulated their temperature. Others think they needed a crest to steer through the air. It's hard to say anything for sure since their fossils are rare and they don't have living descendants. But the most likely option is that the crest had the same purpose as a peacock's tail and was used for selecting mates. The bigger the crest, the more chances a pterosaur had to get a partner. You know theropods, those scary meat-eating predators that are shown in most dinosaur movies? Well, they might have enjoyed eating plants way more than tearing flesh. Not all of them, but it's possible that many of them weren't as fierce as we might think. Those big scary ones, like T-Rex, could be exceptions rather than the rule. The thing is, movies show these creatures to be way faster than they probably were in reality. They could probably run just a little bit more quickly than the average human runner. Scientists study the diet of coelurosaurs. Those seem to be the closest relative to birds. It was hard to figure it out because some of the dinos from this group had peg-like teeth, or in some cases, no teeth at all. To understand what they ate, researchers had to look for direct evidence and check if there was anything in their stomachs. And after they discovered certain things, including a beak with no teeth, they realized these fellas had followed a vegetarian diet most of the time. Even some famous ones, such as velociraptors, could be just innocent plant eaters and not terrifying beasts from Jurassic Park and our childhood nightmares. Over 10 years ago, scientists found fossils of a small dinosaur. It was a creature as big as a parrot with long legs. It came from a family with some of the most famous predators we know about, such as T-Rex and Velociraptor. Most dinosaurs that lived on land had 5 fingers, but later some of them ended up with fewer fingers. This new one they discovered was special because instead of having 3 fingers, which was more common for its family, it had just 1 finger with a sharp curved nail at the end of each front limb. This creature probably used this 1 finger to dig into insects' nests to feast. Even though we know all about the asteroid that wiped out dinosaurs, some have other theories. One paleontologist even had an idea that dinosaurs had possibly reached their end because they had been eating one another. This especially worked for ancestors of fierce, scary predators such as the Tyrannosaurus rex. It's possible they ate so many eggs of other dinosaurs that many species just went extinct. Once they started eating the eggs of very big dinos that we know as sauropods, it's possible they started getting bigger too. And no dinosaur mother could stop them from eating her eggs because she couldn't be around all the time. There were other big predatory animals that ate eggs, even early mammals. But in any case, later research showed dinosaurs couldn't have eaten enough eggs to have caused mass extinction. And that's all I have to say about that.